Good evening, everyone. Welcome to special business meeting of the District of Squamish for April 24th. Halfan Squalum, Quis Telectumat, Tlas Squamish, Owailmeo. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There's an agenda in front of council. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Pryor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. We have one topic essentially on the agenda tonight. It's a public hearing regarding District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw 2100-2009 Amendment Bylaw Garibaldi Springs number 2478 and the corresponding zoning bylaw amendment. So if you're not here for that, you're in the wrong place. I do need to read this one statement before we move on in the public hearing. This public hearing is convened pursuant to Part 14, Division 3 of the Local Government Act to allow the public to make representations to council respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw 2000-2009, Amendment Bylaw Garibaldi Springs, number 2478-2016, and District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200-2011, Amendment Bylaw Garibaldi Springs, number 2497-2016. Everyone present shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that remarks be restricted to the matters contained in the proposed bylaws. Please restrict your comments to the Garibaldi Springs zoning and OCP amendment applications. The public hearing for the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2500-2017, the district-led official community plan bylaw update has closed, and council may not hear comments related to the bylaw number 2500. Members of council may ask questions following presentations. However, the function of council at a public hearing is to listen rather than to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw. In considering the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the Planning Department report, or if received later, handed out at the meeting and included in the public hearing package. If any documents are submitted during the hearing, please feel free to review the document during the hearing by asking staff. Members of the public shall maintain order and quiet and shall not applaud or interrupt any speech or actions of the members of council or any other persons addressing council. I'll now call on the Planning Department to introduce the bylaws.
Thank you. My name is Jonas Vanishkas, Director of Community Planning, and with me today is Susan Stratus, the consultant planner working for the district in reviewing this project, as well as Dave Merrill.
Before you go on, can everybody hear Jonas?
Can you hear me now? And on my right is Director of Major Projects, Dave Merrill. And I'll pass it on to Susan Stratus to present.
Jonas, sorry, can you just reintroduce everyone
Yes.
just to make sure everybody heard? Thank you.
My name is Jonas Vanishkas, Director of Community Planning. With me today on the left is Susan Stratus, the contract planner working for the district in review of this application. And on my right is Dave Merrill, who is Director of Major Projects. And Susan will be making the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just checking that people can hear me. Thank you. The project tonight is the Garibaldi Springs rezoning and OCP amendment application, and I'm just going to briefly review the project and the proposed bylaws. We're going to just walk briefly through the submitted information as well as the actual bylaws themselves. The subject property is 48.3 hectares as shown on the map. It's located east of Tantalus Road, bounded by Dowd to the north, Newport Ridge Drive to the south. The land to the east is undeveloped. The site is a privately owned property, a closed golf course site. There is currently no legal access to the site or to the lands beyond, and the site is previously disturbed due to the construction that took place for the golf course in the early 200s. This map also shows the major creeks that run through the property. in the 2000s. Time warp there. There are 4 major creek complexes and major wetlands in this site, which we'll look at in a bit more detail. Looking at the background, the project actually started in 2016 in June when the applicants came, before they made formal submissions, they came and attended a Community Development Committee meeting to discuss their ideas for the project. They then held early public information meetings in the summer of 2016, and in July they submitted their OCP amendment application, and in November more details were submitted with the rezoning application. In 2017, an update was brought to the Committee of the Whole meeting, and during that period of time between November and May, the district staff were reviewing quite a few technical reports that were submitted for this project. In July 2017, revised plans and an update was brought to the Committee of the Whole committee. The applicant held 2 pop-up events in the fall of 2017, and again in the late fall, they went to the advisory design panel twice. And I would mention that they were, the ADP supported the project at both meetings. In 2018, the formal bylaw process started. On January 8th, both bylaws were given first reading. March 9th, second reading of the bylaws. A formal public information meeting under the district's provisions was held on April 6th, and that leads us to tonight for the public hearing. The technical reports, there was a large body of environmental reports, a bioinventory assessment, a habitat balance report. A third-party review was commissioned by the district to review the submitted bioinventory and habitat balance reports. A subsequent trail surfacing memo and habitat fragmentation memo was also provided by the qualified environmental professionals. A water and sanitary sewer system analysis was done, a preliminary geotechnical report, and flood hazard assessment. And finally, one of the most important, the traffic impact assessment was also completed. There has been some minor new information since second reading, and I'll just point that out. The applicants provided us with an updated booklet on March 30th, which contains some additional sustainability measures that they're proposing, some additional details on the proposed park and trail locations and widths and surfacing, some cross-sections for parcel A, and daycare details were provided in this booklet. New information is also in the council report on the third-party signatory to the environmental covenant, an outline of the proposed park funding, and an outline of the land development agreement is in your council report. So moving on to the current OCP, this map shows you that the majority of the site, let's just see if this handy thing works here. There we are. This is generally the site here, although the green areas, which are greenway corridors and recreation, representing the major stream systems. So the site is primarily greenway corridors and recreation. There's a little errant corner I see that has moved up here that is designated residential neighborhood, as is the surrounding neighborhood. The current zoning on the property is CD12, a comprehensive development zone that was established at the time of the golf course, and it encompasses all of the multifamily developments on Tantalus Road as well as the hotel itself. The surrounding areas are a mix of residential and CD zoning. The proposed development concept consists of 4 parcels of residential development, primarily townhouse and duplex and stacked townhouse units with some single-story cottage units. There are 4 parcels with the number of units as shown, and the phasing is to begin at the north end of the site, with parcel A, and then move downward through parcel B, C, and D. I would mention that the number of units that are shown and many of the details that are shown here are based on the conceptual plan, and the actual number of units may change over time. There may be, for instance, 58 here and 103 here when it comes down to the formal development permit application. The remainder of the site, 68% of the land, is to be dedicated to district ownership, primarily for ecological reserve and also for some park use. The proposed land use, as it breaks down, 68%, roughly two-thirds of the site for ecological reserve, almost 28% for residential and the associated road dedications, 3% for active parks and parking lot, and 0.5%, basically 0.2 hectares for the clubhouse site. The proposed housing mix, again, this is based on the conceptual plan and it's in an approximate distribution. 6% of the units are proposed as cottages, 2% as stacked townhouses, 23% duplex, and 69% townhouse. This housing mix includes 18 affordable rental housing units that are to be secured in a housing agreement with the district in perpetuity, and those are located on parcels A and B, roughly 750 to 990 square feet in size. And the proposed housing also includes 18 lock-off suites within either the duplex or the townhouse units. Parcel A, which is proposed as 60 units, contains also some single-story cottages in the area outlined, there we go, with a little luck, as well as affordable rental stacked townhouses and duplexes. It includes a trail, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this very well, up to a play space at the north end here. And all of these play areas within the development parcels will be covered with a covenant so that they're publicly accessible, both the trails and the play areas themselves. So within the area outlined, and that has shifted, pardon me, that red area is meant to be up a little higher. It's in the zoning bylaw, that is the cottages only, where 1-story height is proposed. At second reading, the zoning bylaw had a 7.5 meter height and 140 square meter size limit. We have talked further with the applicants and are proposing at third reading to bring the zoning bylaw back with an amendment with a 6 meter maximum height, and also with a clause that says no upper story habitable space. In the development booklet, there is another plan showing in cross-section. We know that the parcel A is a concern to people who live nearby on Dowwood Road. So there are cross-sections shown. These are the properties on Dowwood Road, the 2-story height limit that is permitted in the RS1 zone, and showing the change in grade and the 1-story units here, which don't show very well on that sketch, showing them in cross-section, and then moving down to the 3-story units on the lower portion of the site. And again, this is still conceptual. All of these details would normally be reviewed at the development permit stage when each phase comes forward. Parcel B is 101 units proposed in an area with quite varied topography and includes 18 affordable rental townhouses, 2-story duplexes, 3-story townhouses, and an adjacent active play area. Parcel C is much more spread out. There are 117 units within the forested areas and ponds. Single-story cottages are also located here in a little cluster, and 3-story townhomes, as well as another active play area. And parcel D is the very lower part of the site with 72 units proposed surrounding an existing man-made pond that is already there that is proposed to be redeveloped and revegetated with additional vegetation. The applicants have proposed a number of community benefits. On the left-hand side of the screen are the contributions that are proposed under the district's interim policy, which is a financial cash contribution of $3.07 million, which would normally be distributed into general amenities and affordable housing. In addition to that cash contribution, there are additional benefits proposed with an estimated value of $9.23 million. And I'll just start at the top. The applicants are proposing to dedicate a parking lot to the district on Newport Ridge Drive, a public art contribution of $100,000 to be used in accordance with the district's typical procedures of the Public Art Committee deciding where and what this art might look like in conjunction with the applicants. 18 affordable rental housing units, so that is in addition to the cash contribution for affordable housing. There are a number of off-site traffic improvements, which we'll speak to later. They are also proposing that the lower floor of the clubhouse unit be used for daycare purposes, and that would be secured, again, in perpetuity and be managed by a nonprofit association, so that would be secured in a covenant. The public park and trail improvements are proposed to all be completed up front as part of the project with an estimated value of $3.1 million. And this is primarily trail reconstruction as well as development of the active play areas and the redevelopment of the area in front of the hotel. A number of improvements are proposed to the ecological reserve, and that consists mainly of replanting and removal of invasive species as well as upgrading some of the stream crossings. Off-site trail construction is also proposed, which I will show you on a map coming up. So the total community benefits proposed for the project are $12.3 million, which works out to roughly $23 per square foot. The normal rate for new multifamily development is around $6 per square foot. So looking more closely at the public open space and trails, as I mentioned, there's currently no legal public access to the site or the lands beyond. There's no public park or on-site trails. The bike lanes are on the Tantalus roadway, and the sidewalks right now are on the adjacent arterial roads. What is proposed is that legal access for the public will be provided from 3 arterial roads. The total park and ecological reserve to be dedicated to the district is just over 34 hectares in total. 4.3 kilometers of public trails and strata trails are proposed. The strata trails are the ones shown in red that would be within the development parcels, and those again would be covered by a covenant so that the public can access them and so that the trail system is continuous. Part of the upgrades also include public washrooms on the site, and the applicants have included provision for some of these trails to link to the trails that are already quite well used in the community, the trails to the east of the project. The off-site trail improvements include the Wonderland Trail extension, which is currently discontinuous at the top, and the completion of the corridor trail along Tantalus Road. So this will provide a safe, multi-purpose path off the roadway, whereas currently people are walking on the shoulder of the roadway. One of the things I wanted to mention about Tantalus Road, there have been a number of submissions come in mentioning that Tantalus Road is proposed to be a 4-lane roadway. That in fact is not correct. There is no change proposed to Tantalus Road. It's proposed to remain a 2-lane roadway, but the improvement that is proposed is that the applicants are proposing along this section, which is currently a very wide section of road, to introduce street-side parking. So there will be roughly 100 on-street parking spaces. So in order to accomplish that, you can't do more than 2 lanes of traffic. So that is the plan, is to really accommodate parking and a multi-purpose path. Just on the issue of parking, the residential units will be providing parking to bylaw standards, and in some cases exceeding it. The residential visitor parking, there will be 99 spaces within the 4 residential parcels for the residential visitors. For the public, a total of 225 spaces are proposed. Some of those are 58 are on-site. Some of them are on the new strata roads, and others are at the road on Newport Ridge Drive, the parking lot, on Newport Ridge Drive. In total, there's 162 off-site, including the 110 proposed on Tantalus Road, and 5 spaces are proposed for daycare use adjacent to the clubhouse building. So the maintenance costs of the parks and ecological reserve have been an issue since this project was proposed. The proposed funding formula at this point is that the new tax base will pay into the park service costs similar to all other developments in the community for public parks. Polygon will initially cover the costs for parks until the development is built out, so they will pay all of the costs up front, and then as the units build out, they will pay a decreasing share until the development is complete. The preliminary cost estimates are $150,000 a year, and this is an estimate from the district staff, which represents about 3.5% of the current Parks and Recreation Service budget. The maintenance work itself is proposed to be done by the district, except for a number of DFO authorizations, which are required by DFO to be done by the applicants for a 5-year period. All of these items are to be secured in the land development agreement, a covenant for the project. And I won't read this, but the land development agreement is an extremely important document that will ultimately, if the project proceeds, be put in place that secures all of the amenity contributions, the environmental protection, the maintenance costs, the proposed affordable housing, the restrictions on Parcel A, land dedications, right-of-way dedications, and infrastructure that are proposed by the applicants. The actual land development agreement is much more detailed than this, being a legal document, but it establishes both what the applicants are required to do and the timing to make sure the things that are provided are provided at the right time. It would be structured so that they don't move forward in their project until whatever is required is provided. So just looking at the environmental review, I mentioned the bioinventory report was submitted by Cascade Environmental, the final version in December 2017. This is a very complex site with high environmental values. All of the water courses are fish-bearing. Most of the ponds are also fish-bearing. And there's a great variety of fish, wildlife, mammals, amphibians throughout the site that have been documented in the bioinventory report. The peer review, the third-party review, which the district had done to review the submitted reports, concluded that the bioinventory report was a complete and comprehensive description of the resources on the site, and that the habitat budget is founded on RAR, riparian area regulation principles, and is calculated in accordance with DPA 11 guidelines. The peer review concluded that the habitat budget recommendations are comprehensive and reasonable. So with this information as the basis for the project, the district has moved forward with the bylaws as they are proposed. The habitat protection and site planning principles used by the applicants were to design to minimize development impact on existing habitat, primarily by locating development in the previously disturbed areas, retaining large contiguous areas and preventing fragmentation of the habitat, minimizing the footprint of trails and roadways. Setbacks of 15 meters are proposed in some cases, and up to 24 meters from Megan Creek in previously disturbed areas using the RAR detailed assessment method, And 30-meter setbacks are proposed in undisturbed areas using the RAR simple assessment method. The mitigation measures that are proposed are primarily compensation areas with new wetlands, swamplands, and restoration of setback areas. Wildlife culverts and free-span structures are proposed, and fencing of critical areas. Much of the ecological reserve that is proposed to be transferred to the district will be somewhat off limits. The public is proposed to stay on the trail system and the defined park spaces, but not necessarily to go through all of the habitat areas. The environmental reports contain two maps. One is the pre-development map showing what the existing conditions are today. I know these are hard to read from a distance, but the orange areas show the areas that are largely disturbed. The green and blue show the watercourses and the riparian areas. A post-development map has been produced, again showing the development sites, which are in orange, and the green and blue areas being riparian and aquatic habitat. The habitat balance summary, which is required under legislation, shows that there is a loss of riparian habitat and aquatic habitat, but again, as is required to replace what is lost at a greater ratio. So there is a net increase of 1.86 hectares of riparian habitat and a net increase of 0.5 hectare of aquatic habitat. Now, one thing I did also want to mention, we have received a number of comments questioning why DFO and the province have not approved this project. They don't get involved at the rezoning stage. Their authorizations come when the project gets down to the detailed approvals. If the rezoning proceeds, the application would have to go through an environmental DP at the district level and a site alteration permit, and both of those trigger the other agencies being involved and requires their approvals. But the habitat plans have been prepared knowing that those approvals are needed. So I think I've mentioned the proposed enhancements. I won't go through those again. Just a picture from the applicant's submission showing one of the fairways, what it would look like replanted on the right-hand side. And currently those fairways are fairly barren. On the issue of the ecological reserve, the council has requested that the district look into having a third-party signatory to an environmental covenant to ensure that all of the package of protection that is proposed stays in place over time, endures through changes in council and whatever in the long term. So discussions are underway with 2 land conservancy organizations that have expressed interest. And the land development agreement will include a clause that the conservation covenant with one of these parties be completed prior to the first plan of subdivision. And we've structured it that way because it's quite difficult to do this ahead of time. And at that point, the district will be the owner of these lands. So the covenant would actually be between the district and the conservancy organization. So I'll just turn this over to Dave Merrow to talk about servicing and geotechnical conditions.
So the development, the applicant has retained a geotechnical engineer, qualified professional, to review the flood hazard issues with the site. Essentially, the site lies in a conditional densification area with the district's integrated flood hazard management plan, and the FCL, or the flood construction level for the entire site, is 10.8 meters. Current site elevations are between 7 and 8 meters above sea level, and the plan to raise the site to meet the FCL would involve essentially placing about 0.5 meter to 1 meter of fill material along roadways and where buildings will sit. And then the rest of the elevation or lift required to meet the FCL would be through structural means. So a basement or a garage of the building itself. Servicing for the site, the applicant or the district has retained a consulting engineer to review the water and sanitary servicing, as Susan had mentioned earlier. The site can be serviced through existing municipal infrastructure. Services within the site will be strata-owned and maintained. And there will be some off-site sanitary sewer upgrades required, which are currently in the district's DCC bylaw. And those will be either completed by the district as part of the capital plan, or will be completed through a front-end agreement with the developer. Road access to the site will be at 3 locations, one to the north off of a district road right-of-way to Dowd Drive, one from the existing entrance to the Executive Inn, and a third, as the development progresses, will be at the site, or the south end of the site, at the current eastern end of Newport Ridge Drive. The applicant retained a transportation engineer to undertake a traffic impact assessment for the site. With the development providing an additional 350 vehicles, or 350 units, pardon me, to the area, traffic along Tantalus, specifically at Tantalus and Dowd Drive, will increase by approximately 2 to 3 vehicles per minute at the peak Friday and Sunday PM hours. And at the intersection of Tantalus and Newport Ridge Drive, there'll be an additional 3 to 4 vehicles per minute during those peak times. The majority of the traffic will travel to the south using the section of Garibaldi Way between Highway 99 and Tantalus Road. And the development is expected to increase traffic along that segment by approximately 13% and 15% during the Friday PM peak and the Sunday PM peak, respectively. The graph on the right illustrates the contribution from Garibaldi Springs in the red in number of vehicle trips generated versus the middle bars on each Friday PM and Sunday PM, which represents additional other developments planned in the area. These include developments in the Chimaland, Thunderbird Creek development, as well as some additional multi-use development on the corner of Dowd and Tantalus Road. The traffic impact assessment provided some recommendations based on their analysis of traffic and both existing and future projected. It provided both short-term actions that could be implemented, as well as some recommendations for longer-term actions. In the short term, the study recommended that a new right-in, right-out access be created off of the highway, which would connect to the intersection of Newport Ridge Drive and Tantalus Road. This access helps greatly to relieve the pressure off of the section of Garibaldi Way between the highway and Tantalus Road. And the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure has reviewed this option and has said that they approve in concept for providing this access to the highway. The traffic engineer did an assessment of traffic currently using the new right-in, right-out at Dowd Drive. And while it was noted that vehicles were using the entrance, no vehicles that used that right-in, right-out at Dowd were seen to come all the way down to Newport Ridge Drive. So that helped support the fact that this additional right-in, right-out would help both current traffic issues in the area, but also obviously the future development issues. In addition to further help the congestion at the Garibaldi Way and Highway 99 intersection and the stretch between Tantalus and the highway, some minor signal timing changes and phasing changes are proposed at the lights at the highway, and that will help to expedite traffic through onto the highway from Garibaldi Way. Longer-term options, the traffic engineer recommended that a broader traffic assessment be completed for this area of town. While this development provides an additional 350 vehicles, or units, pardon me, the additional future potential development in the area would be much more significant, as was illustrated in that graph on the previous slide. So In the future, it is recommended that this traffic study be done to look at sort of bigger picture solutions for traffic. That could involve a grade-separated access at the highway. It could involve further or a potential all signalized intersection on the highway as a potential option. These will be investigated, and as part of the LDA, the district will be securing a cash contribution from the developer to fund this study, as will be the case for other developments proceeding in the area. Additionally, the traffic engineer recommended that potentially an additional right out from the mall onto the highway would also improve traffic issues that are currently experienced on Garibaldi Way. As I mentioned, the traffic impact assessment and the OCP and rezoning amendment bylaws were referred to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. They do note that with the addition of the Garibaldi Springs development, the overall performance of the highway traffic movement does not differ significantly. As I mentioned, the ministry is not opposed to the proposed Newport Ridge Drive right-in, right-out access from the highway. With the addition of that right-in, right-out, there would be no change to the intersection performance at the highway, but the ministry does recognize that it would greatly improve the congestion experienced on Garibaldi Way. The ministry did note that the proposed right-in, right-out could potentially be a short-term option and may be closed in the future if a longer-term option or solution is presented. Overall, they agree with the recommendations provided in the traffic impact assessment with respect to the road network and projected growth. And additionally, they recommended that the district plan for improved or increased north-south and east-west connectivity in the area. Additionally, the referrals were sent to BC Transit. BC Transit noted that bus service does exist on Tantalus, and in the future may extend to service Dowd Drive and Newport Ridge Drive in the future if there is additional connectivity through both those roads. They have no objection to the proposed development as it is in keeping with nearby density and usage. They did notice that just due to the nature and the layout of the development, it may be difficult to service the development with transit on Tantalus. They suggested potentially an additional access to the site between existing townhouses on Tantalus, which the district recognizes may not be a viable option. Ultimately, they supported the proposal. And CN Rail referral, they had no objections to the plan due to the proximity to the development.
Thanks, Dave. So just moving on to looking at the actual bylaws that are proposed tonight. The proposed OCP amendment, Bylaw 2478, keeps the majority of the site within its current designation as greenway corridors and recreation. All of the green area stays as it is, but the new residential designation is proposed for the 4 parcels A, B, C, and D that are shown in blue. So those are the ones that would change from greenway corridors and recreation to residential neighborhood. The rest of the site would remain with its current designation. The proposed zoning amendment, Bylaw 2497, creates a new RM4 zone for the blue areas. And we chose to use an RM4 zone rather than a CD zone just to give it a name that reflects what is actually going on the site, multiple family housing. The RM4 zone allows for a mix of housing forms that have been proposed. And the new P4 zone has also been created to correspond to the ecological reserve area that is proposed to be transferred to the district. The new zone was created because the existing park zones allow quite a range of activities in them, buildings of all kinds, whereas the P4 zone is a very restricted use for ecological reserve purposes and some trails and interpretive signs. The P3 zone, which is an existing zone, is proposed to be applied to the more active park areas, which are the area in front of the hotel, and these small little P3 areas, as well as the proposed parking lot on Newport Ridge Drive. The clubhouse, which is here, remains zone CD12. As part of this zoning, we're also picking up, there are 4 parcels that are owned by the district on Tantalus Road, sort of in between some of the townhouse communities and adjacent to the hotel. These were dedicated to the district at the time of the golf course development as compensation areas. So rather than having them in CD12, because their purpose is conservation, we're bringing them into the P4 zone also. As part of the zoning bylaw amendment, we have attached a new schedule outlining the parcel cottage subzone, and there are some specific provisions that apply to that with the height limits. And as I mentioned earlier, we are proposing that that height limit, which is currently at 7.5 meters, go down to 6 meters for a pitched roof or 4.5 meters for a flat roof with no upper story habitable space in that area. So just looking at the zoning bylaw regulations that are proposed in the RM4 zone compared to what exists for the RM2, which is the typical townhouse zone in the district, and the RS1 zone, which is the adjacent land on Dowwood Drive. The density is similar at 0.60. It's lower than the townhouse density, but slightly higher than the single family, except for the cottages, which are the same as single family. Lot coverage at 40% is the same as medium density townhouse zoning, except 30% within all of parcel A. The proposed height is 10.68 meters, which would apply to the townhouses, except 7.5 meters for cottages, now proposed to go down to 6 and 4.5. The 10.68 meter height is the same as in your townhouse zone. The single family is currently 9 meters, but just to recognize that the adjacent cottages will be lower than the current RS1 zoning. And I won't read through the setbacks, but the idea of the setbacks in the new zone is to be consistent with the RS zone. They're 9.15 meters, except, they're 6 meter setbacks, except a greater setback of 9.15 meters anywhere where you're adjacent to a single-family zone. So just looking at your overall policy, one of the things we have to do with any development application is to review it in accordance with your OCP policy. And the planning review has indicated, and the reason the planning department has supported this application is that the policy, the proposal is consistent with the OCP environmental protection policies. It provides significant improvements to the ecological functioning on the site. It provides a significant green network that protects ecologically sensitive areas, restores important wetland and riparian habitat areas, and expands the total habitat. The proposal also provides long-term stewardship, which is an OCP policy, through municipal ownership that is proposed for these environmentally sensitive areas. The proposal is also considered consistent with the OCP smart growth principles. It provides for better utilization of municipal infrastructure, which is directly adjacent to the site. It provides a variety of housing forms to meet the needs of the community. It provides compact housing forms that are compatible with surrounding areas. It is adjacent to transit and provides a trail network for active transportation, all of which are part of the smart growth principles in the OCP. In terms of public input, there have been 3 rounds of public input. In 2016, during the early open houses the applicant held, There was a lot of opposition to the project and also a lot of questions raised, just people looking for more information. But generally, we didn't receive any letters in support of the project at that time. In 2017, the public input shifted a bit. 45 responses were received, some in support, quite a few still opposed, and others still asking questions. The 2017 support, however, I would mention, did include letters from a number of organizations, including the Executive Suites Hotel, Norman Rudy's Restaurant, the Megan Creek Strata owners, Executive Suites Strata owners. The Squamish River Watershed Society indicated they would like to work with the applicants on the habitat restoration in the future. And the Squamish Trails Society supported the project because of the access it provides. In 2018, this is not a complete summary because many responses have been coming in today, but from what I've been reading, we're getting a bit of a split still between people opposed and supporting the project. And again, we have received support from organizations that I've listed. The issues that we're hearing, people opposed, really are concerned that the OCP should not be amended. The comment we've seen is that housing can go elsewhere, growth can be downtown and in other infill areas, and that the habitat areas are not suited for development. Many people have mentioned the traffic impacts on Tantalus. There's certainly a great deal of frustration with Tantalus and the Garibaldi intersection. People in favor of the project have indicated that housing is needed in the community. They note that it's been carefully sited and has minimal impacts on the adjacent areas. Others have indicated that this proposal provides an opportunity for restoration and better management of the OCP, of the ESAs. The opportunity for public access for important park and trail connections as well as community amenities is also mentioned. And some other letters have also indicated that the trail system and parks that will be provided help support the commercial activities that are already there. So the recommendations in the council report. The recommendations, subject to what we hear tonight at the public hearing, are that the OCP amendment bylaw be given third reading and that the zoning amendment bylaw be given third reading, including the revisions to the cottage regulations that are, listed in detail in the council report. And that prior to adoption of OCP and zoning bylaws, the land development agreement be executed and the final flood assessment report be provided as part of that land development agreement. And that's the end of the presentation. I apologize, it was quite long.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to council quickly for questions for clarification purposes. Councillor Pryor?
And I know you said it, there's no four-laning Tantalus Road, right?
Yes, that's correct. Until I saw that mentioned in some letters, I've never seen that proposed in any of the engineering or background information. No, it's intended to be 2 lanes, and some of that wide pavement is proposed to be used for parking.
I just noticed some of the letters are complaining about, they don't support it because of the four-laning of.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is everyone still able to hear everybody? Marginal? Okay, we'll try to turn it up. Thank you. Councillor Chappelle.
Thanks. The total number of houses, the 3 slides add up to 393, and then one of the slides adds up to 329. Can you state the total number of homes?
Pardon me.
161, 170, and 72, which is 393. What's the total number of homes?
Through the mayor, the zoning bylaw includes a maximum of 350 units.
Thank you.
There's an upper limit established in the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. And can I ask one more
Yeah, go
question?
ahead.
I'm wondering if this project ever was referred, none of the projects have to be referred to DFO anymore? All of the projects are referred once they're being built?
Through the mayor, the district does do referrals to quite a few agencies, most of whom don't respond because they don't have the staff time. And we did not hear anything from DFO, and my understanding is their involvement comes kind of pre-construction when they're down to a detailed level and specific authorizations are needed. They don't respond to zoning applications, as far as I know.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Councillor, any other questions for clarification purposes? I just have a couple. With regard to the proposed in-out at, I think you said Newport Ridge Drive, do we need to purchase, or does an acquisition of land have to happen there, or do we have a right-of-way? And I just want to make sure that any future design, if it should move forward, has proper acceleration and decelerations lanes included.
Absolutely, to you, Mayor. There is the land that would be required for that right-in, right-out is currently private. However, there is a district, a right-of-way in favor of the district that is approximately 25 meters in that section, which is consistent with the right-of-way on the east side of Tantalus Road. It's 25 meters there as well. So the right-of-way exists, and in the LDA, it's a requirement that the applicant secure that land and dedicate it to the district.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions for clarification purposes for council. Of course, they may come up during the public hearing, so council, just let me know if you have a question. And of course, just a reminder, council can ask any of the speakers questions as well. Now, thank you very much, Planning Department. I now invite the applicant or representative to comment on the proposed rezoning, after which persons affected will be given an opportunity to speak. After I've confirmed it is your turn, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization. And please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council. If you would like to readdress council, we're here until you want to stop talking. However, I think if it looks like the public hearing is going to go on much further than 10 p.m. tonight, we will recess the public hearing and reconvene at another time, which we will determine tonight, that date, if that's necessary.
Can everyone hear me? My name is Kevin Shoemaker. I reside at 5566 Gallagher Place, Eagle Harbor. I've been managing Polygon's proposal for Garibaldi Springs for over 2 years now. I won't take any of council's time going over the details of our proposal. I think staff's done a great job of doing that. Although it has been dramatically improved over the last couple of years, the fundamental idea for the former golf course hasn't changed since the first time we presented it to council in June of 2016, prior to us buying the land. The plan has always been to build on the developed fairways and then reforest the fairways we couldn't build on and create parks and trails on the other fairways that we couldn't build on. And at the end of it, we're ultimately gifting approximately 70% of these private lands over to the district for a public amenity. I just want to say that we are very proud of the plan that has come out of this process. It has been the result of many, many meetings, hundreds of challenges, ideas, and suggestions that came from staff, engaged citizens, community organizations, and council. I particularly wanted to thank the district staff for all the guidance and help that we have received. Whatever the outcome of this application, I can honestly say that Squamish is a joy to do business in. People answer their phones. It's got a problem-solving culture that I can tell you doesn't exist in all the jurisdictions that we build homes in. There is no getting around the fact that Polygon is new to Squamish. People don't know us, and we simply don't have the long-standing relationships and high level of trust that we enjoy in the other cities that we have been building homes in for many years. However, I hope that we have demonstrated our willingness to listen and adapt through the development of this plan, and we are looking forward to the opportunity to earn the community's trust through the execution of this plan, should we be given the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Crystal Tenbrink, and on deck is Lois Wynn. Crystal? No Crystal. Lois Wynn? Come on up, state your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Hi,
And Susie Soman is on deck.
I'm Lois Wynn. I'm at 1530 Eagle Run Drive in Brackendale, and I am here on behalf of my organization, Sea to Sky Community Services Society. I'm here to speak in favor of the proposal, and in a couple areas in particular, the child daycare and the affordable housing. I'm going to speak specifically about the child daycare. I have another colleague that is going to speak to the affordable housing component. One of the things we do, we are a multi-service nonprofit. We provide social programming throughout the corridor, and we presently do operate 8 childcare programs in Squamish. We are acutely aware of the childcare crisis as far as spaces. Just as an example, there are presently about 760 spaces available and about 1,400 children that require those spaces. So when we get involved or get interested in a project like this and hear about a project like this that is bringing a lot of units to the community, another 350 I think we've heard, it's remarkable that the proposal includes a daycare on site, and we welcome that. We have been in conversation with Polygon since the beginning of the year, and we have received a memorandum of understanding from them regarding the childcare space. The space is located at the clubhouse, and it's the proposed retrofit of the entire lower floor of the space to a purpose-built daycare is what we've been in conversation about. Polygon would have the space finished to a turnkey standard, and the design would be done in development with Sea to Sky. The Polygon has proposed a 10-year lease with us, with 2 additional options to renew at 5 years at $1 per annum triple net to Sea to Sky. I just have to say, this is very unique, and for us as a nonprofit organization to attempt to put together a purpose-built daycare like this, we simply wouldn't have the capacity. So finding community partners who are interested and understand the issues is really important, and we're extremely supportive. We would also be responsible, I should mention, for our proportionate share of utilities, taxes, and maintenance, things like that. I think this is a unique opportunity, a unique partnership. We would look forward to be involved in the development of that service on site. In addition, we also understand that Polygon will provide a home care option in some of their proposed units, which is another childcare option for the community as opposed to just a center-based services. So we welcome those ideas and those proposals. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Susie Soman, and on deck, Dennis Smith.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Susie Soman, and I'm the Director of Early Child Development Services for Sea to Sky Community Services. And I'm here to speak about, address 41261 Meadow Avenue, Brackendale.
Thank you.
And I'm here tonight to talk about the specific need for childcare spaces under the Childcare Resource and Referral Program. So as we all know, Squamish is a growing community. Our population has increased by 60% since 2006. And I have some numbers here. We've grown. When I started this program in 2001, we had about 14,000 people in the community. We are currently at 19,512. A large number of those new people, as we all know, are families with young children, and they need childcare. This is one of the highest population increases in Canada. Another important factor to consider is that we have about 60% of our population is under 40 years old and representing young families. We also know that an average of more than 300 babies are born in our community each year, and eventually all of those families will need childcare. We're in support of this project. We need childcare spaces. As Lois said, when I started the program in 2001, we had 76 childcare spaces in the community. We now have about 760, but we need more. As we know, there are more children than spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dennis Smith, and on deck is Jack Cooley. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Mayor, Council, staff, my name is Dennis Smith. My address is 40339 Park Crescent. I'm here specifically on behalf of Sea to Sky Community Services to talk specifically to the affordable housing component of this project. Just a little bit of information about our agencies. We do provide affordable housing to a variety of family types in this region. The stories we hear constantly is the level of the rents and the lack of affordability for families. The waiting lists are in the hundreds. We receive hundreds of applications a year just for affordable housing. The BC Nonprofit Housing Association publishes regularly an annual report citing the rental housing index in this region and in the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. Some interesting numbers that they produced in their most recent is that there are approximately 15,000 households in the SLRD. The number of renters households is approximately 3,600, and the percentage of households that actually rent are 24%. The average renter household income is approximately $59,000, and the median renter's household income is $47,000. The average rent is about $1,200. Now here's where it gets really, really difficult when you hear about families having to spend a lot of their money on their household income. The average percent of income spent on rent and utilities is 24%, and the number of renter households spending more than 30% of their income is approximately 2,000. By spending more than 30% of their household income, that puts those individuals and those families into core housing need. It means that they're vulnerable. It means their housing can be at risk. Projects such as this don't solve that need, but they certainly help add to the solution. They add to aging stock. They provide opportunities for families and individuals to be able to provide affordable housing. Now throw into that mix, you're a person who needs affordable housing, you got a kid, and you're spending money on daycare. That makes things very difficult. So the proposal for this to have a daycare with Sea to Sky or affordable rates and affordable housing just makes the quality of life that much better for those families. Here's where it gets even worse. The number of renter households that are spending more than 50% of their gross household income is 875. And that is 24% of the household incomes that are spending 50% of their household income on their rent and utilities. So having a development such as this come in with 18 affordable units, plus an additional 18 lock-off units that can be mortgage helpers, which make that affordable, more affordable for families that are wanting to own as well. Just want to cite a final thing here in regards to the chief that put in a report or an article a couple of years ago. It says, according to this index, Squamish-Lillooet Regional District is one of the least accessible regions in the country for renters. It is ranked as severe, the second worst category, and falls 252nd out of 284 regions across Canada. These kinds of ideas and these solutions, these creative solutions, help to bring us up in those rankings. And I hope that the council will see that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Cooley, and on deck is Adam Smith. Please state your name, your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Jack Cooley, room 109, 38225 3rd Avenue. I'm speaking on behalf of the Squamish Streamkeeper Society in support of this development. First of all, I'd like to remind council members of a previous email I sent dated October 16, 2017 in support of the Garibaldi Springs development. In it, I mentioned two things: how Polygon listened to and agreed with local residents to not put a fire service road through close to the riparian area of a large pond. And secondly, that they promised to rehabilitate, monitor, and maintain existing streams. And one example of the latter promise to which Polygon agreed is removing huge boulders that roll down that block fish from using Newport Creek. I thought both actions to be commendable. Now, I wish to add that there are currently 70 acres of forested area, which Polygon will increase to 82 acres by reforesting some of the former Gulf fairways. Also, to respect riparian areas, new homes will be built on former fairways, not forested areas. Again, I'm confident Polygon development will prove to be a good neighbor. That's it.
Thank you. Adam Smith, and on deck is Andreas Albert.
We can share, we can share.
My name's Adam Smith, 1974 Dowwood Drive, representing myself as a landowner adjacent to this project, as well as the group Keep Garibaldi Springs Green, which was brought about to keep everyone informed of developments going on here. I'd just like to start off by suggesting that there should be no reading or vote on this matter tonight. The idea is that council, as a collective group, all members take in this information and vote collectively as a full council. So I would just like to make that point that we don't have a full council here if there's a motion to go to that vote. Thank you, council and staff, for your time and your engagement on this to date. Provided a petition from residents numbering just shy of 1,300 residents, which was done online, and all the names and addresses can be seen there. We, as that group opposing this development, don't have means to provide an art gallery, nor a seniors project, daycare, childcare. We have no lobby capacity. We can't sponsor a race, make any promises to the chamber, to the business community. We don't have any contracts for work to hang out, nor remediation or environmental work to hand out. And we have no business to offer the hotel and bar. So we rely on you, council, to uphold the community's plan as laid out in the past and present OCP. The district engaged the community in this current OCP at the highest level. And they spoke very clearly about responsible development and where they wanted it. This was not listed as where it's wanted. One of the arguments that I've heard is this the best we'll get? If this gets voted down, will it get sold? Will another developer come along? Will they wait for a new council? And will what's passed be not so good? Is this the best we're going to get? And I think we have the power. We have it with the Chima lands to say, we didn't want this yet. It wasn't ready for the community. Please wait until this population. Now we're raising the bar on that project for another decade while we're shoehorning this one out of the OCP. We have the power to set a population cap on this project. When there isn't suitable land within community hubs and planned areas to develop on that's less sensitive, we can look at this. Let us know when we're out of land, and let's look at this project. We don't have to see this again and again and again. In closing, I hope that your vote on this issue best represents the interest of Squamish residents, present, people that built this town and live here now, not just development and people who stand to profit from this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Andreas Albert is up now, and on deck is Bean Craig. Welcome.
Andreas Albert, 41120 Rockridge Place, adjacent to the section between the Phase 1 and Phase 2, representing myself as property owner. I wrote to council with 2 letters with my wife opposing the development. Tonight, I would like to talk about two key aspects of what I want to bring to Council's attention. First of all, a trade-off between green space and development has been already approved and long sanctioned. Let's go back in history to the 1990s when the golf course was originally developed. The Garibaldi Springs Golf Course was developed under a much larger land deal, including over 100 townhouses, commercial space, and obviously the 135-room hotel. The current land use designation for Garibaldi Springs, which is Greenway Corridors and Recreation, was an important part of the original designation and approval, and was traded off against surrounding residential and commercial development. The residents of Squamish were assured that the golf course would be a green space, and the developer could build residents adjacent to the golf course. This approach is commonly found in a part of any major golf course development. Polygon's proposal is effectively double-dipping on previous development deal. From a process perspective, this should be ruled out. The trade-off between green space and development has already been made. It has been previously approved by Council and should be still honored today. The right to keep the current zoning is within the residents of Squamish. This is a core fact we have to keep in mind when viewing this proposal. As the golf course has commercially failed, we need to look for viable opportunities to keep the space green. Accepting 350 homes as a solution is a bad deal for Squamish, especially for the residents surrounding the property who bought based on designated green space. My second point goes even further. This is a bad financial deal for Squamish and every resident surrounding the property. Not only are we being asked to give up what's legally ours, green space next to our property, but we're getting poorly compensated. Polygon quotes a community benefit of $12.3 million. While this number sounds impressive, it is not. I urge Council to do a proper business analysis. I guarantee you that Polygon will make many more times than is being promised to Squamish. Council, please look at this as you are selling your own house. Would you sell your own house, let's say at 10 cents on the dollar, for the next owner to come along and flip it for fair market value? You would do your homework to ensure that you understand what is fair market value. Furthermore, the residents of Squamish take on all the liabilities for the community park and ecological reserve. Effectively, we're using the taxpayers' money of the new property to pay for it instead of other contribution to the community. A great deal for the developer, a poor deal for Squamish. The surrounding neighbors paid property values with a lifetime savings based on neighborhood green space. We will see our property values reduced and have to put up with countless years of construction and loss of privacy, just to the financial benefit of a developer. For ourselves, we are losing privacy in our back with a retaining wall being proposed on the property line, trees cut down, houses being squeezed right to the edge as far as possible. In addition, we will have a busy road with associated noise next to us. For a proposal even to be considered, we are asking Council to reduce density, increase setbacks, and protect trees from being cut down to ensure privacy and value of the existing homes. Overall, this is a bad deal in its current form for all of Squamish residents. With over 1,200 people, actually now nearly 1,300 people signing the online petition, you don't have the backing of the residents to approve this one-sided deal. I strongly urge Council to reject this proposal and suggest that Council considers a development committee, which includes the local residents adjacent to the property, work with the planning department to come up with an acceptable rezoning option with the interests of Squamish residents at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please. I'm going to ask that we don't clap or make any comments, please. Thank you. Beam Craig is up, and Susan Bourbonnet is on deck.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Beau Craig. Currently reside at 1344 Elmwood Drive. I am here representing WRM Strata Management and Real Estate Services. We manage a portfolio of long-term rental properties, as well as approximately 200 strata corporations, and approximately 10,000 units in this case, in the Sea to Sky corridor. We deal with residential and commercial property owners, as well as various real estate developers on a daily basis. I would like to express my support for Polygon's proposal for the Garibaldi Strings. Over the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to work with Polygon on their Seven Peaks project, just right across the street from here. All the people that I've worked with Polygon have been extremely professional, community-minded, and genuinely interested in providing the best product for the community. This has truly been a breath of fresh air compared to the other development companies that we have worked with over the past 30 years. In my experience, Polygon has shown an interest in providing a product that they are prepared to stand behind and provide the owners with peace of mind that the development company is in a supporting position for many years to come, which is truly not the case with a lot of developers out there. Squamish is a fast-growing community. We should embrace and encourage this type of growth by supporting reputable developers who put forward community-minded development plans, such as this. I believe this current proposal has been well thought out and would be an amazing addition to Squamish. Thank you for considering my comments. That's all I have.
Thank you. And sorry for getting your name wrong. Susan Bourbonnais, and on deck is Chessie Knight.
So my name is Susan Bourbonnais. I live on Rockridge Place. I'm opposed to the zoning amendment. I just have 2 comments. One is I do kind of question the developer's interest in Squamish beyond the financial gains, seeing that they've closed the land to residents as opposed to Mr. Chima, who's actually allowed people to use his land. I just don't see that forward thinking of working with the community. The other thing is in relation to one of the slides about the pros and the cons. One of the pros was that it was minimal impact on surrounding areas. I can assure you this will have significant impact on the residents of Rockridge Place and Dowad with noise, traffic, loss of privacy, as well as loss of home value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chessie Knight, on deck is Edith Tobe. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Chessie Knight, 40741 Highlands Way North. I'm a registered professional biologist, and I'm speaking tonight as the president of the Squamish River Watershed Society, so speaking on behalf of the Watershed Society. And just a couple of things to clarify before I read a statement that we sent to Mayor and Council today and copied to Polygon. It's interesting hearing the concerns from the residents north of the golf course because if we go take ourselves back several years, the land that is now occupied by the homes on Dowad Drive, and I'm not sure how much up past that, was greenways and recreation space, and that was rezoned. So precedent has been set. I'm not saying that I agree with it one way or the other, that's council's decision, but that precedent has been set. And I'd like to clarify something that was given in the presentation regarding the Squamish River Watershed Society's position on this development. We've been very clear with both Polygon and Mayor and Council that it is not the Watershed Society's business model, if you will, to either support or negate a property or an individual development. We will comment on proposed environmental legislation at the local government level, provincial, federal government level, but it is not our business to give individual support or, as I said, also speak against an individual development project. We will provide comment, but that's it. We respect council's decision-making on whether or not to approve individual projects. That being said, I would like to very quickly read through the statement that Edith Tobe, our executive director, prepared for Mayor and Council today, and we copied to Polygon. And this will clarify our position for everyone on this particular development. The Squamish River Watershed Society recognizes the challenges associated with rezoning lands from greenway corridors and recreation to residential neighborhood, and the potential impacts these changes may have on the ecosystem, hydrology, ecological services, and social aspects of the subject parcel and surrounding parcels. I think we've already heard some of that tonight. We have witnessed the changes of the land parcel on which Garibaldi Springs is situated from pristine forest, rich with salmon-bearing watercourses and ecologically robust wetlands, to a golf course, golf club hotel, and now we're looking at a proposed housing development site. So, should the District of Squamish, Mayor and Council, vote in favor of the proposed rezoning of these lands to residential neighborhood, then the Squamish River Watershed Society would welcome the opportunity to work with the district and Polygon in providing long-term maintenance and management of the proposed 33-hectare ecological reserve. Furthermore, the Watershed Society would welcome the opportunity to work with District of Squamish staff and Polygon to reestablish, where possible, portions of the ecological reserve back into the rich, ecologically diverse habitat that previously existed at this location. Thank you.
Chelsea.
Thank you.
Patty, can I ask
Yeah.
Chelsea a question? Chelsea?
Mind going back up, Councillor Pryor?
Yes, thank you. So have you reviewed the proposed changes, some of them?
Some of them, yeah, yeah.
And do you see a positive outcome to the changes that you've seen?
I think that in a perfect world, this site would be left entirely as it is, and we would all have the opportunity to do further restoration. So I think at this point, I don't feel strongly one way or the other on the proposed changes. It's more the Watershed Society feels that if this proposal goes ahead, we would like to work with the district and Polygon to maximize the restoration and enhancement opportunities on the site. That may include one of the things that, if I had the opportunity to ask staff, I'm not sure if I do, the fairways that are proposed for replanting, our hope would be that the fill would be removed, those areas would be brought back down to natural grade before they are replanted.
So there is improvements needed?
Yes. And there's the potential, if we all work together, there's the potential to make improvements on that 33 hectares that will be put into the ecological reserve.
And then it would be an ecological reserve?
That's what it's being called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, another question, Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you, Chelsea. I think that's a very clear position. I appreciate that. I'm wondering about the FCL level next to the rivers. One of my concerns has been that the land will be elevated and the runoff with the cement and the flood hazard area, the amount of elevation is going to cause a lot of runoff. Is it possible to do appropriate restoration with 350 townhomes being elevated to FCL?
All right, thanks for your question, Councillor Chappelle. The answer lies in how the stormwater management plan is developed. We've talked with Polygon about that, and we'd like to continue talks with the district and with Polygon, but the key to maintaining the natural hydrology, or its current state, it's not quite as natural as it was before the golf course, but its current state, it's going to be critical to do two things. One is getting the water into the ground, or however the development team proposes to treat it. It has to be treated for water quality, get rid of the sediments and the toxins from the road runoff, etc. And the other very critical part of the stormwater is infiltration or detention, I guess, but my preference is infiltration. But the goal being to have that stormwater released at a rate, at a volume, at a discharge that matches the current undeveloped state, or the current state. So the more that you concentrate stormwater runoff off of these paved surfaces, and yes, the raising to FCO will compact the ground, etc., the more that you can mimic the pre-development conditions, both with rate of discharge and water quality, the better chance we have of maintaining the habitat values in those watercourses and wetlands.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I have Edith Tobe, and on deck is Chris Pettingill. Chris Pettingill, and on deck is Matt Parker. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, business, or an organization.
Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Pettingill. I'm representing myself, and I'm at 1065 J Crescent in Squamish. I was just looking at some of the maps and thinking about green space and golf courses, and I think it's a bit of a misnomer to call a golf course a green space and think ecological. I mean, it's green in color, but in terms of environmental value, I'm not sure how great it is. And so the aspect of restoration in this project appeals to me, and especially if it is a true net gain in ecological habitat, seems like a good thing. But as I looked at the map, a few people online have talked about the importance of green corridors and not just green space. And this is really, though, it's an end point. You can't go further west or north or south. You could go east. And so when I look at the map, I think the corridor is actually lot 509, 510. And so it struck me that the ecological value of Garibaldi Springs is really dependent on where the development happens on 509 and 510. And we could cut off access to larger animals to Garibaldi Springs depending on how we do or don't develop 509 or 510. I'm not sure. I know 509 and 510 is future residential. I'm not clear on what ability the district has to decide where development can or can't happen on that parcel. But as we're sort of assessing the ecological value of this Garibaldi Springs project, I think we have to be thinking about that other project too and what we can or can't do there. So, I guess I would just finish by saying, to the degree that we can preserve a corridor through there, seeing some ecological preservation with some homes that's arguably a bit of infill. If there's a net gain in homes, a net gain in ecological preservation, that seems like a good thing. But I think we maybe have to look a little bit beyond how all the pieces fit together to really assess this.
Thank you. Matt Parker, and on deck is Ihor Zalubniak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, thank you for all the work you do in guiding the development and evolution of our town. I really appreciate the countless hours you put in attending meetings like this. My name is Matt Parker. I live at 1114 Wilson Crescent. I've lived there for 20 years, and I am the current president of the Squamish Trail Society, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Squamish Trail Society. It has been a long-standing dream of the Squamish Trail Society to provide a continuous trail connection from our downtown waterfront to the shores of on the shores of the Salish Sea to the sky by Mount Garibaldi to the north. Putting the bulk of the Garibaldi Springs lands into the public domain, as outlined in the current development plan, is one piece in making that dream a reality. In addition to providing a variety of housing options, over 2/3 of the land will be preserved as green space, allowing the people to connect to nature and the natural environment close to home. The Garibaldi Springs Development Plan promotes and preserves trail corridors within the site, provides a much-needed wheelchair-accessible loop within the site, and improves trail connectivity off-site as it extends the corridor trail further along Tantalus Road to the pedestrian overpass over the highway, and will connect the Bracken Trail to the Wonderland Trail and make improvements to the Bracken Trail to improve its accessibility and its safety. Ironically, the previous incarnation of the site as a golf course actually interrupted our trail continuity in that area. So with any project, I'm sure there's some give and take and some pros and cons, but we at the Squamish Trail Society firmly believe that this proposal, if fairly assessed, provides more benefits to our community than liabilities. We hope the council and council members can see their way to supporting the plan that's before them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ihor Zalubniak, and on deck is Dwayne Kress. And I did want to just say quickly, it's on the agenda that council can technically consider third reading after the public hearing, but I don't think council has any intention. There's been a ton of material that's been given to us today that council will want to be able to have a good chance to go over, so I don't anticipate any consideration of third reading tonight.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and District staff. My name is Ihor Zalubniak. I live at 2302 Greenwood Way. I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor for 25 years, and I probably helped develop some of the lands where new people came to Squamish and live now. Affordability. The Garibaldi Springs development contributes to the solution. Affordability has been adopted by the district as an issue to be resolved through amenities contributions and specific requirements of development permits. Regardless of anyone's ideological underpinnings, every square foot of housing that's dedicated to providing affordable housing in Squamish is a win. Polygon's project contributes to that win. Approximately 18 units, based on the current design, of the townhomes will be provided for this purpose in accordance with the proposed District of Squamish affordable housing policy. Style and type. The missing middle housing is that been referred to in the OCP, draft OCP, is addressed in this proposal. Duplex homes create compact housing and provide user-friendly yards. Cottages provide housing with ease of access for individuals with mobility constraints, things like osteoarthritis. Can't make your way up a set of stairs. Yeah. Homes with master bedrooms on the main floor have been developed with great success in other communities. Pitt Meadows did it, and they sold them out within a day. The townhouse component of the project provides additional housing stock over a projected build-out period of 8 years. Approximately 18 units will have suites incorporated into the design. This is a creative addition to the supply of rental housing in Squamish. This development also provides an alternate destination for homeowners who would like to live north of the Mamquam River, should that be their option and opinion. The fairways, the previous and the proposed. Years ago, the proposal of a golf course was approved and permitted by several layers of government. And it's highly probable that the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans granted a consent, as did the provincial ministry that was charged with oversight of environmental impacts from the development, and the local council would have had input to the project as well at that time. Once that process had been completed, the construction began. Many truckloads of material for fill and topping were introduced, as well as the dredging that came out of some of the lower areas. Large equipment managing those materials crossed and recrossed the areas that were designed as the fairways for the course. The land was compressed, stabilized, and subject to treatment before leaving it irrevocably changed. There are no longer the same spaces that once were. This is why that they are proposed for the construction of homes. The environmental sensitivity that they once had is diminished and in many cases gone. Independent estimates of Polygon's financial commitment for environmental considerations on the margins of these lands may exceed 1.2 million and would probably include somewhere between 40 and 50,000 shrubs and trees being planted. Now, the idea that in some way those lands could be remediated into the type of environment they once were is intriguing, and not totally an unromantic notion. The scope of the project would require substantial public funding over many years to rectify the modifications that were originally approved by government, as well as the purchase of the lands from the developer to enact such a recovery. I don't think there's anybody here who wants to pay for taxes to have a problem that was fixed or created by previous governments. Pathways. Now, I think these are referred to as greenways, and all I can figure out when I hear greenway is it means you can either walk on it or ride a bike on it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be green. Squamish has a vision of developing a network of walking and cycling paths to join neighborhoods and promote travel in ways other than automobiles. Polygon's Garibaldi Springs project promotes that network. New trails within the development are extensive and contribute to the sort of feet on the ground or on the pedals activities that comprise healthy lifestyles in our community. Some of the connections will be totally new and travel through forested areas. I'd like to draw your attention to the several kilometers of trail now along Highway 99 north of Garibaldi Way. This cycling walking path parallels the highway, occasionally immediately adjacent and sometimes a bit distant, but it contributes to the overall plan of alternate mobility. In the proposed development, some trails will be along environmentally preserved lands and others will be along established transportation corridors. Many of these connections do not exist at this time and are without any guarantee that they would be supplied at any future time. Polygon's proposed development contributes to the vision of our district now. A good example of this is the 2.5 kilometer north-south connector trail, which will be the main corridor through the site and provides a connection to the overall Squamish network.
Ihor, I'll ask you to wrap up. We've done 5 minutes, but
Okay, well, I'll come back on the other ones then, but I'll come back later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dwayne Kress and Shay Emmy is on deck. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me all right? Perfect. I'm suffering from a head cold, so I don't hear it too well, so I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. My name is Dwayne Kress. I live in the Highlands. I am the organizer of the Squamish mountain bike event here mainly taking place in the Highlands. Today I'm just going to I obviously speak in support of the proposal. The proposal provides a fantastic event space that would not have, the event was made possible because of it. I can speak just quickly to the genesis of this event. It had actually started long before I realized it. Moving here in 2003, I think 2 months before the Olympic announcement, and I thought that was a big change for Squamish at the time. Over the course of the next few years, of course, falling in love with the community itself, its easy access to the forest, as Kevin had pointed out, the sort of problem-solving nature of the people that pulled together and built many of the infrastructures and facilities that we have today, and the integral part that the Test of Metal had for a lot of the outdoor recreational activities that didn't just start and stop at cycling. A lot of those activities involved suds, beverages, but nonetheless, it built a community. In 2010, I, in a short conversation with Cliff Miller, thought it might be a good idea to hold an event in August. At that time, we had one in May called the Org Crusher, the June Test of Metal, the July Gear Jammer, and I thought it'd be a bright idea to have one in August. He thought it was a great idea and said, go ahead, put one on. So here I was, suddenly running an event from 2010 till 2016. That event was called Jabber, which was short for Just Another Bike Race. It was announced in early 2016 that by the Test of Metal Organizing Committee that that event would no longer continue. 21 years to be exact, was a fantastic run, and I'm sure a lot of people felt a major loss at that. And myself and another individual, Sean Daly, both felt that we needed to keep something going to keep that spirit alive, and just to keep a yearly mountain bike event going. Up to this point, the highest attendance I had for the Jabber was 120 riders. We started off our first year with the start-finish at Quest University, and throughout the build-out of the Quest University that also involved the housing, each year added a new wrinkle and a new challenge to hosting and running the event, much like Test of Metal got to experience from its early days to 1996 and forward. I think the volunteer force grew at a faster pace than the racer number at one point. So the Jabber was a fun event for me. Luckily, never got too big because of the venue space that we were dealing with. We weren't quite large enough to take on the same venue space that the Test of Metal did. But yet, Squamish was nationally known for being able to put on high-level, high-quality events. In 2014, Jabber was able to host the Canadian National Mountain Bike Marathon Championships after the originally scheduled host organizing committee had pulled out. I had been contacted by someone close to the Canadian Cycling Association and asking if I would take this on. I say that is a direct benefit of the Test of Metal organization and how well of a job that they've done in the past, that the Canadian Cycling Association knew that we could put together a good high-level event on such a short notice. So moving forward with Squamish, I had in my mind maximum about 300 riders, and I was still trying to wrap my head around this because, of course, 2016 was the last year for the Jabber, and as we all know, Aristotle Crescent, or Aristotle Place, had just reached full build. That was a part of the race course at that time, and I had many sleepless nights trying to figure out how to fit 300 riders. Another idea had come to me through another person in the community about using the polygon lands for the event, and that's when a light bulb went off. I figured right away that that land, I knew I needed to have access. That land would have allow me to accommodate 300 riders, but what we did is we actually bumped it up to 600 and sold out in our first year, which was amazing for an event, and we have made an impact on a national level with that event. I recently retired from a mining career, and I've been afforded a lot of time to put into this, and it has taken a lot of time to get this event off the ground last year, mainly due to land access. I am here again. I've met with councillors trying to figure out how to get this going. I've been receiving an incredible amount of support from the community, an incredible amount of support from volunteers. The Chamber of Squamish Chamber of Business, Tourism Squamish, we all recognize the value of events in this town.
Dwayne, I'm going to ask you to wrap up. We've 5 minutes left.
We need an event space like this, and I support this, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Shay Emmy, and on deck, Geraldine Goodwin.
Hello, my name is Shay Emery, and I'm here representing a company I started 4 years ago. It's called Axwood. It's a mobile events company that does events outdoors. And I'm also a father of two who could use affordable housing, who could use daycare, and it's something that my wife and I, both business owners in the region, struggle with on a daily basis. So recently I retired from a professional football career and have transferred into this, this new venture of trying to create a community here in BC where I was born and raised, and wanting to set my foundation here in this region. And really the issue has been the business that I started has been very difficult to staff. Frontward facing, I might have a nice shirt on tonight, but when someone's living in a trailer at the end of the Squamish Valley Road and he only does laundry once a week, and he's the face of your company, or she's the face of your company, it's very difficult to keep them on board because, one, they're not aesthetically the way you want them to look, representing your community and your business. And so either they are gypsies and they just get out of Dodge, or they've been given the opportunity and you can move them up in the ranks and give them enough money to survive here, which is very few and far between. The reason why I'm here in support of this project is because Polygon has created an opportunity for me to present this experience at Norman Rudy's on the lands, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to have this experience moving forward, because it's a community experience. It's 20 to 50 to 100 to 200 to 2,000 people all coming around this experience to socialize and build their community. And that's why I started it, is because I wanted to create a community that I could be a part of, but also nourish and enable these young individuals who are trying to move to this community to thrive. And that's exactly why I'm here. Just, I guess, one other point is I do have a very close relationship with Polygon, because one of their head executives is a close friend of mine, and he's enabled me to have this platform, and he's enabled me to build this community. And so, I can speak from my heart and say that this is an organization and a project that I fully believe in, and I appreciate the time, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Geraldine Goodwin, and on deck is Donald, it's either Lawton or Lawson.
Right, I'm Geraldine Goodwin of 41140 Rockbridge Place. I'm one of the many who has always been against the polygon development, as I believe it makes a farce of the OCP, and also the fact that it devalues the properties where we live. I've emailed the district about this because I don't understand how people in power who are supposed to love and care about this community could sign off such a monster development, could destroy such a beautiful piece of land, displacing animals on it, and because they won't be tiptoeing around, will they? And could create the chaos that would result after such a development, like high volume traffic, etc., and who could add yet another burden onto the already fragmented infrastructure of this town. And we've heard people talk about schools, young families moving into the area. I don't know whether they're all finding places in elementary school for their kids, but where do they go afterwards? We've got one middle school and one high school. And regarding the bike race that happened last year, came out of Tantalus Road. It was absolute chaos. The cycling lanes were parking lanes. The road was a cycling lane. So we're going to have that every year. So I just think it's a really bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Donald Lawton, and on deck is Donald Byrne. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
I'm Donald Lawton, and I live in Greenside Estates, 41050 Tantalus, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. While I support this project and this development, I have some concerns about Tantalus Road and the traffic on it. 200 housing units will create, in all likelihood, 500 vehicles. 500 vehicles exiting those housing units every morning and returning every evening. The morning exit is a concern for me because we already have problems exiting Tantalus onto Garibaldi Way. At 8 o'clock in the morning, it can take 5 to 8 minutes to make a left-hand turn at that intersection. And it is becoming increasingly dangerous in terms of traffic and possible potential collisions. I believe that the right-in, right-out exit that already exists at the end of Tantalus Road onto Highway 99 and the one that's proposed for earlier on are really a deceitful dream, because few of the vehicles that are going to leave this development or the developments that are already on Tantalus Road will exit going north. Most of them will exit going downtown and or into Vancouver. Using the right out exit that exists already is a potential to increase the traffic through Brackendale. And I'm sure the residents of Brackendale would not like to see Government Road becoming a south arterial way. I think the council needs to encourage the developer to do something about that exit, that intersection at the corner of Tantalus Road and Garibaldi Way, as an indication of faith and goodwill towards the community prior to the beginning of the development. We already have large lorries coming down from the development that's already taking place, and they are not exiting on the right out exit. They are coming down Tantalus Road, contributing to the traffic there. The building of 350 units will increase the traffic considerably. One of the things that a lot of people probably have already experienced is that a funeral already contributes to traffic constipation on Tantalus Road and at that intersection. And so something needs to be done prior to the beginning of that construction for the safety of the community and for the convenience of the residents who are already there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Donald Byrne, and on deck is Gwen Young.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors and all here. My name is Donald Byrne, of course, and I live at 1024 Regency Place, which is at the corner of where the golf course is. The other part of the road there would be Regency Place. And of course, we built our house there about 20 years ago, and we understood that it would always be a golf course. So when the last application came up, which I think was about 3 years ago, we spoke against it, and council saw the light and actually voted against it. There are other places to have golf courses, and also at the time there was a very experienced golfer that did golfing lessons and golfing this and that, and he knew exactly how to do the golf course, and he intended, you know, to go ahead and buy it, but he was allegedly underbid somehow by the last developer. So anyhow, we feel very strongly that you should leave it as it is, rather than have people that have, like myself, felt that they would not be bothered by extra traffic and everything like that. And have the golf course go again, and if you like, I can recommend the person, I don't have his name, but I can recommend the person that would have bought it the last time and got underbid. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gwen Young, and on deck, Dean Eggleton, pardon me. You state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Yeah, my name's Gwen Young, and I live on Rockridge Place. I've been a proud Squamish resident for the past 17 years, and like many, I came here to savor the outdoor lifestyle. It has never been lost on me how incredibly beautiful this community is. The OCP was created at a significant cost to the taxpayers and involved hours of lengthy, detailed input from the community. It was a shared vision for Squamish's future, and this proposal was not part of it. Amending this plan is setting a dangerous precedent and does not represent the overall consensus of the people. Years ago, the golf course was for sale. I knew of investors who were really interested in purchasing the land for development, but again and again they were told that it could never be anything other than green space due to the environmental sensitivity of the area. How do these decisions change and deteriorate over years and with the changing of guard? The only environment assessment I am aware of is one that was conducted and paid for by the developer. There should be an independent consultant contracted for the environmental assessment that is not being paid for or influenced to provide a fair, unbiased review. We should be building on benchland, not green space. We have over 150 homes being developed in Skyridge right now, and the installation of a school of approximately 150. Very few of those residents have moved in, and already the impact to Tantalus and Garibaldi Way is unsafe. Adding an additional 350 homes will inundate the area, and there are no viable plans to deal with the flow. The traffic assessments are inaccurate and unrealistic. I can't make a left-hand turn from Tantalus onto Garibaldi Way without waiting a really long time, so I've been diverting to Cheakamus like a lot of other people. I've seen near misses of pedestrians and vehicles on several occasions as frustration and anger builds. Many of you have advised that in return for approving this amendment, that Squamish will receive parkland that is usable. This just isn't true. What is actually happening is you are removing green space, and in return, Squamish is being given only that land that the developer can't build on. And the taxpayers will bear the potential liability exposure and maintenance cost of that remaining land. We have no responsibility to award any land to a developer who purchased on speculation. This is a terrible, short-sighted business decision. As much as I appreciate and recognize the need for additional daycare and affordable housing, we are in desperate need of life-saving amenities. A new fire station. The hospital can't cope with the population increase. Our schools are in need. We need an expanded recreation center. The dike and infrastructure require an investment and attention. The needs of the community are vast and ever demanding, and we have not derived the necessary assets in exchange for this proposal. The saddest aspect for me is that I've talked to a lot of people, and I've tried to encourage them to come out tonight. And what I sense is just a sense of defeat from the community of Squamish. People feel devastated and angry and incredibly disappointed. But trying to rally people to come and share their vision and opinion is almost impossible because the consensus is that it doesn't matter what we do, it won't make a difference. And that, to me, is incredibly sad. I've heard people talk tonight in favor of this development, but many of those organizations or persons, in my opinion, either have or will benefit directly or indirectly from this development. I urge Council to stop this proposal from moving forward at this time and alternatively respect and honor the OCP, which truly represents all residents of Squamish.
Thank you. Dean Eggleton, and on deck is Jeff Cook.
Good evening, Mayor, Council and residents. My name's Dean Eggleton, residing in 6127 Eagle Ridge and representing the business of Norman Rudy's and Gibbons Hospitality Group. I won't speak too long because a lot of points have been made that I wanted to make. But like Polygon, we're new to the district of Squamish, coming up to 1 year of our operations, and I've had immense support moving down here, and we really appreciate that. We are in favour, as it's shown the past couple of years. We have provided letters in support of the Polygon development. Yes, it's going to benefit our business and other surrounding businesses in the area, but mainly in support of the activation of the event and green space into a parkland that could be used by the community. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Cook, and on deck is Greg Parker. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
My name's Jeff Cook. I live at 1-40777 Thunderbird Ridge, and I'm speaking on behalf of SORCA. So I just want to clarify before I start. I'm speaking in relation to the impacts on mountain biking and in that perspective alone. Obviously, this question is a lot more complex, and there's more to life than mountain biking, although that's kind of sacrilege in this town, but there is. So there, right now, the land that is currently there is kind of a dead zone for mountain biking. Up till now, there hasn't been great access through there. There have been some issues with people coming down kind of free range trails and coming into the backyards, through the backyards of people in the townhouses there. So that's been an issue for us that we've had to deal with. There's quite a number of positives that come out of this particular development from a mountain bike perspective. Parking at trailheads is becoming an increasingly bigger problem, and with more and more tourists coming to our town, coming to park at the major trailheads. We're seeing a ton of people parking at the end of Perth. We constantly get comments from the residents on Ring Creek Road, up the road there, who are, a lot of people parking in the overflow at Half Nelson Lot and at the bottom of Sugo. We're about to have probably a crisis around the University Heights land, where once all those houses get built and all the people who have been parking to go mountain biking outside of those homes or along the road are going to find there's a bit of a pinch point there. So we desperately need staging areas, places where people can go to park and then ride from. And this facility that's talked about in what Dwayne mentioned is going to be something like that will actually provide a lot of relief for other areas. From a trail connections point of view, one of the things that the developer has promised is the funding of the Wonderland connection, which will create an excellent loop from the Alice Lake area. It will also provide a big benefit if the Chikai development goes ahead, the Chikai fan development. It will provide great access for people in those residents to come down and then go up and access into the Alice Lake area. So that's a real positive. They've talked about twinning the Bracken Trail, which right now is quite a dangerous, a lot of people walk up it, a lot of people ride fast down it, and it's a problem point. So we've been looking for a solution to that, but just don't have the money or resources to do that. So we've talked about doing that, which will be a good benefit for the people, the new residents in that area. It will be a good benefit for the people who live in Brackendale and ride across the bridge to get up into the Alice Lake area. and it will, again, complete that circle loop if you're, going up, down, and then you can come down through Wonderland all the way down without needing to cross the highway or ride along the shoulder. So with that said, I think there's still some improvements that I'd like to see. If this is approved, I know the promise is to get some of these trails like the Wonderland done with the end of the first phase. I think that's what I'd like to see, is that get moved up forward to when it's fully approved. I'd love to see that built this fall if things go ahead. I think it's a really important thing. I've also think to create the Bracken Trail connector, we're going to need a little more resources. I think we've earmarked about 50,000 or so in there, or Polygon has. I think it's going to probably need another 50 to 100 in there. So I think that's something that needs to get looked at. And in addition, just making sure that the connections through the property into the lands to the east and to the north are connecting with the trails. As you know, we're working with Mr. Chima to find a good development proposal for his lands that incorporate a major mountain bike reserve and another major green space to see all these connections link up and look at this entire zone in a holistic way, I think would make a lot of sense. So that's all the comments I have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. My dad's trying to call me. We have Greg Parker, and on deck is Pam Godrowski.
My name is Greg Parker. I reside at 38537 Sky Pilot Drive. I'm here to speak on behalf of the project to support it. I believe for this project, Polygon is a reputable developer. The scale of which we need to take proper care of a project like this, it takes a developer of this size with this reputation to be able to manage the environmental portion of it, be able to put the money into it, and they have a reputation in the Lower Mainland to be able to do an excellent job. I've had dealings with them so far to date, and I would say that they're one of the best developers that we've dealt with so far. Currently, there's a lot of mediocre projects, and Polygon with their Seven Peaks project across the road showing a diligence to build a quality product. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Kozdrowski, and on deck is Dion Burke. I have 3 more names on my list here, and perhaps we'll take a 5-minute break there just to allow people to stretch their legs and come right back. Welcome.
Hi, Pam Kozdrowski, 41050 Townless Road, concerned citizen of Squamish. I've lived here for over 20 years. I just want to read to you something that I found in doing a bunch of research on this whole project. It comes from our growth management strategy. Under topic 5.2.2 reads, Squamish is blessed with a rich natural endowment of habitat and a diverse terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems and wildlife. The habitat located in the district is of regional, provincial, and national significance. There are many sensitive ecosystems located in the district which are situated outside the designated park status. With the pressures of population growth and the associated development facing the district over the next decades, these areas are at risk of becoming lost or negatively impacted by these developments. Many of these environs are what makes Squamish a desirable place to live. Preserving these areas in perpetuity is a legacy that the district can leave for future generations to enjoy. The purpose of the protected areas and ecological greenways and blueways system is to protect terrestrial and aquatic habitat, maintain biodiversity, and provide connections for wildlife movement. There's a definition of unprotected sensitive ecosystems in that same area of the growth management strategy, and it reads, these are ecosystems that are currently unprotected and are sensitive to disturbances from development pressures. The sensitive ecosystems include sensitive aquatic ecosystems such as wetlands. So with that in mind, I'd like to express my strong opposition to OCP Amendment Bylaw 2016, and Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2497, 2016, for these main three reasons. I agree with everybody else that's spoke here in opposition also. Number one, we owe the landowner nothing. They bought on speculation. They bought a sensitive ecosystem. That is not our problem. Our town needs a better deal than parkland that we already have and a daycare that will house a few kids. I don't know how many. I'd be interested to hear the actual number. We get, in turn, future parking, traffic, and maintenance nightmares while they walk away. Keep in mind that the landowner is a land developer and nothing else. Kevin Shoemaker came out. I live at Greenside Estates. Kevin Shoemaker came out and gave us a little tour and walk around. I videotaped that session. And in that session, he was asked the question, what if this application isn't approved? His response is, we will sell. We are here to make a profit, and that's it. Remember, that's why they are here. They are here to make money and get out. Everybody keeps referring to what's happening across the street. Did you see what happened across the street? They mowed it down. There's no elk, there's no squirrels, there's no ants that live there anymore. Number two, the landowner has not contacted DFO or Canada Environment. I've been in touch with both those entities. No one from the District of Squamish, the Planning Committee, the Planning Department, Polygon, no one has been in touch with either one of these government agencies. No, they're not required to do so, but why would they not do this as a good show of good faith? I cannot trust them to have done their due diligence if they cannot even take these simple steps of good faith. They are not. It would take a weight off knowing that DFO, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, had been consulted and on what Polygon is proposing. This rings far too many bells for me. My third main point, the damage and destruction that is going to be required to rehabilitate the land will completely obliterate the wildlife and riparian life that is currently there. There will be nothing left when they are done. It won't matter how pretty it is, how many shrubs they put in if there's no one left to live there. No creatures anyway, lots of people, trails, paved trails, roads. The springs that feed the streams will be compacted. The aquifer will no longer be able to work the way it currently works. Yes, this is already altered land. Yes, it is. But two wrongs don't make a right. I'm concerned that all the infrastructure work that will be required will affect the overall flow of water and life on the land. This is the main issue for me, the destruction of habitat that will occur over the 8 to 10 year build out. It will take so much to recover from this, more so than anything that is currently happening. We're already 5 years into a life growth. Let's not stop that and start from scratch again. Nature is finally starting to come back to the land now. Let nature heal. She will do a much better job than we ever could. We have the opportunity to plan today for what our community will look like in the future. This green space, like others, like our actual golf course and the Dykes area, makes Squamish why people want to move to our community. Don't be short-sighted. In this case, the destination is not worth the journey of destruction.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. You were right on 5 minutes. Good job. Dion Burke, and on deck is Dave Thetty. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Hello, my name is Dion Burke, and I live at Garibaldi Highlands at 1012 J Crescent. First, I'd like to stipulate that I have no interest in any development and do not regard myself as pro or anti-development. Our family are a recent transplant to Squamish and purchased our home in 2015. I'm here tonight as an active and concerned tax-paying citizen, hoping to help shape this great city we now call home. Before we committed to Squamish, we visited many communities around British Columbia. What concerned me the most from our first impressions was the state of Squamish public amenities. I was concerned when we saw the fire hall being braced up, City Hall with paint peeling off of it, and a recreational facility that looked, well, tired. I was also concerned with the amount of incomplete development in subdivisions we toured. Overgrown vacant lots, rundown and abandoned buildings. Ultimately, our family took the leap of faith and invested and committed to Squamish. Watching this town grow in the short time has been refreshing and reaffirms our commitment to Squamish. I've attended most public meetings to watch, listen, and learn how this town plans to evolve. Gleaning from these meetings, many concerned citizens echoed my thoughts. They want planned, sustained, and measured growth. I'd like to address the feasibility study that Polygon has put forward for the golf course property. First, I'd like some clarity from council and city officials. The golf course property is surrounded by several parcels of land held by a variety of private interests. Much has been said via social media of the Chima lands. This land is zoned residential, correct?
No,
It's not zoned residential.
it's own resource, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure.
Are we talking about Chima lands?
Yes,
Or
yes.
lots 5 and 9 are zoned resource, they're not zoned residential.
Okay. Beside the Chima lands to the south and east of the golf course is a parcel of land referred to as Thunderbird Creek, held by the Holborn Group, correct?
Yes.
This parcel of land is also zoned residential?
I believe so, however, there is a requirement in the current official community plan for a sub-area plan before any development could happen on those lands.
This land was not approved for housing as far back as 2006? Because I've seen actually drawings given to me by City Council showing the road network, the housing, the amount of housing that was already approved, I believe, back in 2006. I'm just here to get clarification on that.
The land still needs to go through a official community plan amendment process and then probably a rezoning process before.
Well, I was told it was done so long ago that they'd probably have to resubmit, but it was done back in 2006, or thereabouts, was it not?
No, there's still a requirement in the current official community plan for a sub-area plan before the land can be developed.
What does that mean?
That means that a master plan has to be drafted and approved by council before the land can be developed. So that would normally be an amendment to the official community plan and then followed by a rezoning process to reflect the official community plan.
But is it not already zoned residential? So what would it need to be rezoned for?
It would be zoned for whatever the sub-area plan has in its policy for development. So if it's zoned for residential now, it would probably be different forms of residential and commercial and parks. Anything that comes out of the sub-area planning process. Right now, it would be zoned for single-family residential.
There must be some confusion because I saw drawings and plans where road network connecting from Pia Road all the way down to Newport Ridge, I believe it is. Whole network of different sort of subdivisions that were, I get proposed, approved, whatever else, but it was obviously done back in 2006. Bottom line is, when you venture, and this is the same developer that's also developing around the University Heights that started again around 2006-ish.
Holborn is a developer that's active at the University Heights as well, yes.
And if you venture past the chain link fence at the end of Aristotle Road, beyond the university, hidden amongst most of the overgrowth is fully serviced lots just waiting. The service is already into those lots, correct?
I'm not sure where you're talking
Past
about.
Aristotle. When you go down to Aristotle, there's a dead end where the chain link goes across the road. And if you walk into the bush there, well overgrown, I mean, I was there for the test of metal race and walk back there and you can see all the plumbing and piping and sewer connections already put into those lands back there. Correct?
There are some services there.
Okay. So forget about the downtown, the waterfront, Scott Road, Cheeky Fan, and on and on. Many developments already approved and in the pipeline to build. If it took 12 plus years ago for a mere 60 plus lots that went up in sale in the Jay and Condor in the Highlands and still have vacant lots. So if a developer is sitting on approved land for over a decade, I think it is safe to say that the economic environment was not favorable, and this begs the question, How and why did we even get here tonight in regards to rezoning this golf course property? Squamish has plenty of already zoned residential property waiting for the right economic climate to flourish in. What happens to the buying pool when too much land is opened up for sale? Look at today's MLS listings for Squamish. Available are condos, towns, semis, and detached in all our neighborhoods. This has increased substantially with all the current development. This feasibility study that Polygon has put forward for the golf course lands looks nice, but it's just one option. Why not consider options for what it is currently zoned for? You know, many forward politicians and past governments took bold steps and created places such as Stanley Park in Vancouver, Central Park in New York, Hyde Park in Toronto. All urban parks that preserve the green space that are crown jewels of these first-class cities. How about that for an option with this golf course land? This feasibility study flies directly in the face of the current official plan and the revised one working its way through as we speak. Members of council are elected by the taxpayers. They are supposed to be our stewards to protect and develop the collective vision. This rezoning is not in adherence with the past or future vision of the OCP. These documents need to be filed away until such land is required for development, if ever. It has taken over a decade to develop lands around the university, Crumpet Woods, etc. Squamish does not need any more half-finished neighborhoods. Would council allow a developer to build a 4-story condo only to have them mothball it on the 2nd story while they start another condo? No. I ask this council to stop the haphazard development, intensify what is currently approved and zoned. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Petty, and on deck is John Hawkins. Dave doesn't sound like Dave's here. John Hawkins. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is John Hawkins. I'm a resident of 40450 Cheakamus Place. That's the street everyone takes the shortcut on to get around Tantalus and Garibaldi Way that we've heard about, and I'm here representing myself. Excuse me. Thank you. So we've heard a lot about the ecological sensitivity of these areas and the golf course lands, and I certainly would agree with that. But I'm going to suggest that the entire development proposal is not all the same. And particularly what I want to talk about is the very south end of the golf course lands, the furthest south fairway. I have lived in the Garibaldi Estates area for about 12 years now. Probably my family has walked on Coho Trail, for those of you that know it, adjacent to the eastern border of the lands just about every day for about 12 years, rain or shine. When we first moved here, that area, which we call Coho Park, is really Coho Trail. It's actually an easement. Most of it is an easement on the Hollyburn lands. Was kind of like, I thought, the best kept secret in Squamish. It's not much of a secret anymore. Over the course of the 12 years, we've seen the ecological value of that area be quite significantly degraded as we get more and more traffic in there, and a lot of that traffic is my family, for sure. I don't begrudge anyone that, but it is an oft-neglected little piece of paradise in Squamish. It's probably got some of the most amazing old-growth spruce in there that you can find anywhere in town. Last year, I think we saw literally hundreds, if not even maybe up to the thousands of chum and coho spawning in the headwaters of Meagan Creek there. The biggest year I've seen in 12 years. This year we had almost none, obviously related to the cycles. I'm not drawing any conclusions there. What I want to suggest is that I'm neither opposed nor supportive of the development, or at least that's not what I'm here to speak about. But I would suggest that the Pod D, I believe it's called, is the 4th phase of the development. It's 70 units on the most southern end, should be carefully considered. I respect that Polygon has proposed significant contribution to maintaining the ecological integrity of the area. I spoke to a Polygon representative last summer about particular actions that could be taken to protect that area from invasive species. And that was encouraging. But I would also suggest that it's almost an impossible task. And if you consider Coho Park from behind Park Crescent, you'll notice that we have significant invasive species, almost like a blanket, all the way behind all the residences, right until the last resident ends. And then you've got native species. You just can't keep invasive species out of areas adjacent to residences. So by developing that south end, I can assure you, no matter how vigilant we try to be, we will see invasive species in there. We will see increased traffic into that sensitive riparian area that is already significantly degraded and has not seen really any maintenance for probably since that trail was built during the golf course development period. So I think what I would like to suggest is that there may be opportunities for us to reconsider, not the development as a whole, but consider, and staff would know better than I do, what opportunities might exist within the development approval, and maybe that's at a later stage, but not looking at particularly the south ends of the golf course around the sensitive ponds and basically what is in effect the headwaters for Meagan Creek and those salmon streams. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. And the last on my list is Nabila Kabani, and then we'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll come back. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Nabila Kabani. I own 2 lots on Dowa Drive, lot 14 and 15. My biggest concern is, I agree with all my neighbors, first of all. My situation is a little bit unique, whereas the land behind my property is already zoned for single-family housing. So having Polygon say that they're going to make single-level cottage-style houses behind there is favorable for me. They did address the fact that they would be further away from my lot, but by putting basically parking in front of the houses before you get to the house. So looking at that, although the housing will be further away from my lot, I'm still seeing a parking lot, which is not so favorable. But my biggest concern is the traffic that is going to come on Dowa Drive. Lot 15 happens to be the corner lot. Going down that street, there's a school right across my property. There's going to be high traffic from school, high traffic from residences. There's going to be kids there. There's only 2 entrances allocated to this huge complex, which is one off Dowa Drive, and I don't know the other street further south. So that's my biggest issue, is the flow on Dowa Drive specifically, because that's going to be my area of interest. And because there's also a school there, I would ask that council really consider that factor, adding another entrance to facilitate a midway point so that, if this project does go through, that there are more entrances to this project and exits to the project as well. That is my biggest concern. Having said that, also these cottage-style homes, I would ask council to consider putting in, maybe suggesting a limit as to who can actually own or occupation or occupied residents only. I fear that, in these cottage-style homes, you might have a lot of rentals, short-term rentals, and although some, they kind of catered for one-level living where maybe elderly people may occupy it, I would suggest that that really be considered a stipulation, maybe 55 plus, owner occupied only. And that would maybe reserve the integrity of the neighborhood, because a lot of the people building houses there are owner occupied. They're building their dream house, and it would preserve the integrity of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. If you would still like to speak at the public hearing, please go out and fill out the form out in the foyer. That'd be great. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I have a few more speakers that have put their names down. First up is Stefan, nope, that's wrong, sorry. Warren Kyland, or Kyland. Welcome. State your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Warren Keeland, 507 1212 Main Street. Most of the pieces and the items that I wanted to speak about tonight have already been mentioned. I'd like to say that I strongly support the application, and I think it'll be a great addition to Squamish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Andreas Albert, and on deck is Don Petrocco.
Hi, Andreas Albert, 41120 Rockridge again. I would like to reflect on some additional comments made this evening. I'm probably one of the few members here who have owned a polygon home. I owned one for 5 years. I've been on the Strata Council for many years because I'm interested in what I own and how it is maintained. Within 5 years, my balcony posts were rotten. I didn't see a polygon representative help me on that side. The strata fees, what we were given, were completely inadequate to actually maintain the property in the long term. So in terms of what was proposed, it didn't reflect reality. Putting a proper 25-year plan, what I did as treasurer at that time, found the correct numbers to ensure the long-term financial contribution from owners. What I want to point to is what we're dealing with is a developer. A developer is here not to make Squamish a better place, he's here to make money. And that's the only objective of the company. It is to make money. So when we look at it, we had the comments is daycare spaces are great. How many spaces are there? We're adding 350 homes. Are we even adding enough daycare spaces considering the population profile, what we see in Squamish? So just a sanity question on that side. Looking further, and one of the letters, what I wrote to council, the concern that we saw from our properties, young trees being cut down in the watershed of Newport Creek, which I believe is not an appropriate action. And I don't think was environmentally sanctioned and reviewed. So for me, it's focus on, we're here to make money. We're not necessarily there to actually ensure the right things being done. The other one is, many people have spoken out for biking trails, etc. We look at Bob Chima allowing the mountain bikers, the community to use its land while he's waiting to get development permits. The clear message from Polygon in any public forum was, keep out, you're trespassing. That was the message. That's a great neighbor, right? So keep out. So why would we want to actually let them in if they tell us, keep out? You're not welcome on our property. So I'm rather interested in supporting projects which actually are neighborly from that perspective. Going back to the OCP, and in many points here, what is not being, I think stressed enough, infill development. It is in the current zoned OCP, infill development is outlined as a concept. If we look at the discussion, what were made in terms of developing the new ACP, infill development has been a key point. So based also on one of the previous speakers, there's lots and lots of opportunity without giving up green space. So thank you again for your attention.
Thank you. Don Petrocco, and on deck is Stefan Chen.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Don Petrocco, 1004 Wenda Place. And I'm here just to talk on my own behalf. And I'll start off by saying I haven't had a 5-minute time limit since my grade 8 oral presentation, so if I go over a bit, I apologize in advance. Just wanted to say that I'm a fairly newbie to the neighborhood, but have a few concerns. Recreated on that piece of land in the area around it before it was ever a golf course, okay? When Marilyn Ring used to own the property before Chima. A few concerns that I have.
We're not talking about Mr. Chima's land.
No,
okay.
yeah, I understand. But the one thing that I noticed at the last public presentation is the connectivity of Newport Ridge up to the Highlands as proposed along this. And the fact that I'm going to be introducing a parking lot at the end of Newport Ridge, which I guess where my vested interest comes in is for my neighborhood and my family. That number of vehicles to come through. Nobody talks about the connection from Newport Ridge to the highway as well. It's definitely going to be a northbound connector, not a leftbound connector. So you're not creating any new solve, for the Garibaldi Way and Tantalus Road. That's not solving any of that dangerousness. And I'm one of the ones, unfortunately, that drives by John's house very many times along Garibaldi Way to avoid, or Cheakamus Way, to avoid that intersection. So I just want, it's one thing that's brought up by a number of my neighbors who couldn't make it here tonight is that they fought this fight a few times. We've seen this land move from a fairly productive watershed to a golf course, okay? And, now we're seeing it once again. The greenway connectivity that's there that may be at risk if you let this go. It'll be costing the district more money if you leave it as is, because the bear that currently lives there and breaks into my garbage receptacle and recycling receptacle every once, it's going to cost you more money. But I'm willing to live with that. So I just wanted to bring it forward to you folks to think about this in the long term and the connectivity that exists there. And when people talk about trail connectivity, there's already trail connectivity through Coho Park and up into Jack's Trail. I've ridden those trails for years, right? And anybody who's walked or hiked or biked the Covenant Trail would argue that it's not really connectivity, but it's a challenge. But trails tend to happen here, and I think the Wonderland Trail extension will happen anyways without the funding from Polygon. So that's what I'm just coming forward to say. Give it a good thought and think about the long-term planning for that part of Squamish. There's a lot of other developments already set in place. I just wanted to think about what the future of our neighborhood's going to be like and our connectivity with our greenways for a variety of reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan, and on deck is Ihor Slubniak.
Good evening. My name is Stefan Chan. I reside at 41050 Tantalus Road, Greenside Estates. I represent myself basically as a concerned citizen. I am strongly opposed to this development, not under the merit of NIMBYism or anything like that. I think where I live personally right now, I back onto the green space. So for me, there wouldn't be any development other than reforestation, which technically is still development, but there won't be any houses behind my place. So technically I should be in favor for this, but I'm not. I'm not at all in favor for this project. I find the people that are in favor for this development, which is staggering, I can't believe how many people are benefit directly from this development. Sorka, obviously they want money, they want funding for more trails, that's clear. The Trail Society, same sort of thing. When you look at these areas, the trails are cut off through the golf course, that's clear. But the trails that we're building, they're not mountain bike trails, they're paths, they're just connected trails. They get money, they need money, they get money from Polygon to build these trails. The low income, the argument for low income housing, I don't know the exact number, I heard 18 out of the 350 units. That's 5% of all the units. So I don't think that's gonna help solve our low income housing problem. And the low income housing, I don't know, I don't know the numbers, but I would imagine in today's market, 350 to 400,000 is cheap, but I don't believe it's low income housing. Childcare, they're buttering up the development because they throw in a child care facility. That's you couldn't even house 10%, 5% of the children that might be moving into this development. So how can you swing votes with such little benefits, and when the big picture you have is the destruction of a green space. It was destroyed from its original state. I get that. And I live in a unit that destroyed that original green space. I get that. But there has been a golf course on there for 8 to 10 years now. And I can tell you that nature is completely taking its course. The golf cart paths are barely recognizable anymore. Like, asphalt is mostly gone on all of those. There are lots of riparian areas, wetlands, hundreds to thousands of frogs that I hear every night from my window this time of year. Bears, a pack of coyotes, bobcats, like so many animals live in this place. Beavers, there's beavers that reside in almost all the man-made ponds that have been there for 12 years now. So we're talking about developing something that's already been grown over, and the argument for adding green space is a complete crock. Like, you're taking away green space, and you're only adding green space because you're taking it away. The space is green, the space is thriving, and the space will thrive even more. To offset the green space they're taking away, behind my house, they want to dredge down at least a foot or two, whatever the new soils were that they added to build the golf course. They want to dredge those soils out and flood the area to expand the riparian area. That's a great idea, but you're going to be looking at massive machinery in there to take out all that material. So how is that not going to disturb any of the green space there? And not to mention, like, utilities, sewer, electrical, water. How are all those going to get in there when they're surrounded by streams and riparian areas? You're going to have to dig all those up. Like, I build homes for a living. This is just common sense. So because they're adding a childcare or a daycare and 18 units, which is 5% of the units will be low-income housing, it is not worth it. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Ihor Zalubniak and Gwen Young is on deck.
It's amazing how we can have such diversity of opinions on a single project like this with so many different components. I've heard people say, well, we don't owe this developer anything. No, that's right, we don't. I came here in 1974 and I banged nails for Wilf Dowd. And I looked at the hillside, Rock Ridge, Sky Ridge. There's no houses there. I used to ride my horse through there. Nobody stopped those developments and said, oh, no, we can't do that. It's a hillside, or it's this, or it's that. They said, well, let's build it. People want it. They want to live there. They want to come to Squamish and live here, and they all don't want to live at the waterfront. Not everybody wants the wind blowing up their tail every afternoon. Some people want to live north of the Mamquam, and they want to live in decent housing as well, not just condos. So anyways, in this time of public scrutiny and government oversight of development, it's easy to lose sight of the importance of private land ownership and the rights thereof. You buy a piece of property and you got trees that shade my yard. Can I tell you to cut them down? No, because they're yours and they're on your land, and you preserve that. But I believe that respecting those rights within a framework that confirms responsible land development is crucial. And now, as I understand, in spite of what I've heard here from one gentleman about his porch falling off, and that happened a lot in Vancouver, Polygon has a great reputation as a builder-developer and has made a tremendous effort, I think, to meet with homeowners in the adjacent lands and to try to address their issues as and where possible. Not all of the issues are design issues. Some of them are just, I don't want it there because it bothers me. It affects my view. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going to alienate some of my friends saying this, but your prices aren't dropping because they're going to do a development down below you. Your prices are dropping because the whole market's dropping. That's a fact. Somebody talked about real estate properties that are for sale right now. Take a drive through the Highlands. There's properties that have been on the market for 100+ days. Compare that last year when our average days were 24. And what's happening to our market? That's not happening because Polygon wants to develop some houses down the hill. Oh, man. They talk about developing this area, and they're going to put out 81 acres of environmental land. Do you have any idea how big 81 acres is? You see this area here between the two white lines, and that's about 180 square feet. That's 180 square feet per person in Squamish that's going to be dedicated as environmental reserve. That's your spot. That's your spot. Look at how many people are in here. That's 180 square feet per person. Name another development that does that. Doesn't exist. And that's gifted to the district. And it'll remain as it is into the future. This is a reincorporation of land that's been screwed up into a useful contribution to our community. This land has been screwed up. There's no doubt about it. We're not going to get it back to what it once was. And the immutable rule of the ecology of the lowlands is you grow a tree beside a creek, it falls into the creek, or not the creek, the pond. And that keeps happening over millennia, and pretty soon that swamp becomes a lowland, and then it becomes a highland, and the water is relocated. Now that happens over millennia. And at least what we're seeing here is the effort to prevent that from happening, at least in our lifetimes, as narcissistic as we are about how important things are to our lifetimes alone. So, as I said, this is a reincorporation of screwed up land into a useful contribution to our community. It's housing, it's connectivity, it's ecological preservation. So, I guess you know that I'm in favor of the project. Not necessarily because of what it is, but because of what it brings back to Squamish. And it brings back some use to those lands that is beyond just letting them sit there and let the weeds grow on it again. You know, some fella here talked about he can see where it's growing over. There are lots of places in the world where buildings have been abandoned and they've been taken over by nature. That's nature's process. And it's man who interferes in that continually. Every home we build interferes with nature's process. Every road we build interferes with that. So, Council, in spite of the shortcomings that have been identified by many people here, I think that giving Polygon permissions to proceed and then being very stringent and very strict about what can and can't be done on those lands is probably the best way to go, because we have no idea how to define when these lands will become when it'll be the time for these lands to be used. So, thank you.
Gwen Young, and on deck is Jordan Teslick.
Gwen Young, Rockridge Place. My daughter couldn't be here tonight. She's hopefully sleeping right now as I read this. But it's an assignment she did for school because she felt really passionate about this project and she wanted to have a voice here tonight, so I agreed to read this on her behalf. Keep Squamish green, they said. Protect the natural environment, they campaigned. No LNG. And yet our mayor and council are voting for in favor of amending the OCP, which was built on community feedback, trust, and preserving Squamish. Squamish is full of wildlife, and by continuing this development, you are endangering wildlife and nature. Two of the biggest concerns regarding animals are the shrew and frog species. The OCP is being changed without the community being involved. After millions of dollars, she may be a little off there, and years of creating this plan formed with extensive community feedback, they are now going to change it. The OCP was set to have responsible growth and development, and in my opinion, and many others' opinions, that won't happen. Amending the OCP to accommodate a big developer who purchased land knowing it was not zoned for residential development is irresponsible. Lastly, The golf course was never supposed to be for residential use. Every day I see kids playing on this beautiful piece of land. I see ducks and other water animals swimming in the pond. I see kids having picnics. I hear wolves and frogs at night. If Garibaldi Springs turned into a residential piece of land, then I don't know that I will see that anymore. I'm only 11 years old, but I don't understand how these leaders can make so many campaign promises to get elected and then fail to keep their word. It is very disappointing, and I will be very sad if our green space is given to a developer to profit from. Maybe kids should start running for government positions because it is ultimately our future they are impacting. Chloe Young, age 11.
Tell Chloe thank you very much. Jordan Tesla, and my last speaker so far is Chris Burgess. I'll quickly go to council and perhaps if there's any clarification questions staff want to address, and then we'll continue seeing if there's anyone who wants to speak.
I'll try to keep it brief. I just want to correct something that was said.
Can you just
sorry.
state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself or
Jordan,
business?
Jordan Teslak, 1950 Dowwood Drive, representing myself. Earlier, somebody said 1,300 signatures were collected online. A lot of them were actually collected in person. When the petition was generated to say no, that was actually done, a lot of it was done in person. I personally sat outside the market and asked people to, sign the petition. I did not have anybody say no. I did not encounter a single person at that time. Admittedly, that was earlier. So I'm stating that so that you do not dismiss the depth of public feelings on this. Looking back at the original proposal, it was very different. My reaction to it was not very positive. I should probably thank the proponent who actually came to my property and stood there for more than actually 5 minutes because I was livid. The original proposal had a townhouse a full story above mine, blocking out all of the sunlight right on the property line. And as a new home builder, I was already at the end of my rope. So that was a very, very difficult thing to see. And the reaction was very negative. Now, I realize it's come a long way, but I also realize that's part of the psychology of building, that the worst possible thing was presented. The sun was blacked out. There was no trees, no nothing. I was between a row of townhouses and a rock wall. And that once you back off from that, I'm supposed to feel a sense of relief. I'm supposed to feel good. Everything's nice and all these goodies are coming. And that really is the psychology of development. And that was what I was told to expect. I quickly came to expect that things would change. The reason I bring this up is because much of what's been presented and what I see in the plan, I find it very alarming because I keep seeing the word conceptual. A lot of these things that are being done, the arrangement of buildings, the grading, the height, the setback, particularly the arrangements of units, if it's only conceptual, then what protection is there actually for the neighbors? And I ask you to not dismiss very quickly the concerns of the people that neighbor the properties. I would say the people that neighbor it on the street where I live, these are the people that doubled down on Squamish. We bought that land because it bordered green space. We could have easily sold out, take the money and run and move to somewhere else in BC, but we decided to double down, invest in our own community, and stay here. So when we saw that it was going to be potentially changed, yeah, it was very alarming. So what I don't see is enough assurances that things are going to stay the way they are. All of these things that were being promised in terms of the configuration of the buildings, any grading gets changed, a couple more view units are needed, units get taken from one area to another. That's my concern. I have grave concerns about the conceptual nature of this, particularly because once the zoning is obtained, then it seems like it may be simple, free range to change things within that. And I ask council to closely look at those and protect the existing neighbors. And I realize that is small potatoes. There's other big things here at stake. We are talking about housing supply. We are talking about environment. I'm not going to repeat any of the things that other people have already covered, but do remember that the people that live there now, they doubled down, they're committed to this community, and they do trust you to protect their interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. And the last name I have on my list is Chris Burgess.
Hello, my name is Chris Burgess. I live at 41165 Rockridge Place.
I would just like to take this opportunity to reiterate what my fellow neighbors have already said. We're deeply concerned with the proposed development. Just the other day, I was just looking out my backyard, and a black bear was sunning himself on the golf course. I'm back onto the golf course. And I'm very concerned with what's going to happen to that black bear if this goes forward. There's no way that he's going to have a place to live in this new development. So at some point, that black bear is going to be displaced. There just isn't any way that you're going to be able to build this type of a community of housing and maintain the wildlife that is currently there. It is green space, whether it's privately owned or whether it's publicly owned. Right now, it's being it's being lived on by wildlife that we will be killing by letting this go forward. And that is my biggest concern. So I would hope that you guys would consider that in your consideration with this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jonas, are there some clarification questions that are worth
Yes,
bringing
perhaps we
forward?
can clarify the, can everybody hear me? Perhaps we can clarify the, there's been a concern raised that there was a lack of involvement from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and I'll let Dave Merrow speak to that.
Yes, so the project was originally referred to the DFO essentially as a courtesy. There is no formal pre-application process with the DFO, so we're not required to send anything, and they don't want to receive anything until the DP phase when they actually receive an application. The role of the QEP is...
Could we just maybe not use jargon so people understand? Thank you.
Apologies. Qualified environmental professional who prepares the preliminary reports. They essentially do the work to prepare for the application, the formal application that's submitted as part of the DP process.
One more point was raised about the developer hiring the qualified professional to do the environmental assessment, and I just want to clarify that the district also retained a third-party qualified professional to do a peer review of that environmental assessment. So it was independent review.
Council, I'm looking if you'd like any questions for clarification. Councillor Chappelle?
Thank you. I understand the fisheries office is closing in Squamish. Is that correct?
We've heard that rumor. I'm not sure if it's
I think it was
official.
confirmed this week.
Yeah, that's, I wasn't sure if it was confirmed or not. I'm just checking if that's confirmed. So oversight for fisheries was normally done by our fisheries office here. This being sensitive habitat, I'm wondering what will be our recourse for DFO not being in the community any longer and not having fisheries officers to oversee this project?
I believe our expectation is that we will still receive the same level of service from DFO, although their office might not be in Squamish by the time, if this development proceeds forward.
Can I just follow up with that as well? So when we have a peer-reviewed assessment, it's just purely based, it's not based on zoning or anything else. It's just, could this development be remediated? What are the questions that are asked in a peer-reviewed remediation, looking at a peer-reviewed remediation of a property? Is it, can the property, if it's developed, be rehabilitated in the same way, or is it, are the applicant's assessments correct?
And peer-reviewed the assessment of the value of the land as well as the assessment of the value of the created habitat, correct?
Yeah.
I can speak to that through the mayor. The peer reviewer that reviewed the applicant's environmental professionals' reports. They reviewed both the bioinventory report as well as the habitat balance. And essentially their scope was to ensure that the reports were complete and that the reports assessed all of the required information for the applicable regulations. So essentially, were the reports completed? Were they factually correct? And did they meet the requirements, the regulatory requirements?
Okay, it doesn't go above and beyond the scope to assess endangered species or the other things that are on there?
It did, for the preliminary bioinventory report, it did review the list of species that the applicant's qualified professional generated, and it actually compared them to other databases and made suggestions for revisions, which the applicant then incorporated into a revised version of the report.
Thank you. How many endangered species are on that property?
Through the mayor, I don't have a number in front of me. I could look it up. Quite a number were identified as potentially being there. There were a few that I believe were actually identified, observed, but there was the potential for a number to be there.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave.
Councillor Pryor, then Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, thank you. I thought maybe Jonas, you'd clear that up. How does this fit into our land strategy? A couple of speakers referred to it as not fitting into the land strategy.
I'm just considering whether to answer this question from our current official community plan or the future one. I know we've noted in previous reporting that this is within the growth management boundary of the forthcoming OCP. Our current OCP doesn't really have a growth management boundary. It uses other thresholds like the 200 elevation threshold for development, as well as reservation of future lands for development. So this land is within it. However, it is designated as greenway corridors and recreation, which currently wouldn't allow development.
Of this kind.
Yeah, but it fit in the growth management because it was surrounded three sides by growth, and I mean, you spoke
Yes,
on that.
the policies of the OCP would support it from a change in land use perspective in terms of housing because of existing services that surround the site on three sides.
Yeah, okay. And now somebody said the land to the north was greenway, like that subdivisions that are going in now in the school, that was all greenway?
Can't confirm that. I would have to go back and check.
And can you say why this land, I mean, I heard comments on we're not following the OCP, but this particular property wasn't in the OCP, it was done separately.
Yes, the district has decided at the beginning of the OCP update process that it would exclude development applications that wanted to change the amendment or wanted to change the land use designation so that they can go through their own process rather than sit and wait for that change to happen.
I think the other piece was that significant developments proposals like this one and Chikai didn't want to get them lost in the overall process as well.
Exactly.
And this isn't the
Yes.
only one that's going through their own individual process.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
I have a couple of questions. One is around, certainly many people spoke to the traffic issues that currently exist. And Mr. Maurer, you spoke about short-term and longer-term options. What are the short-term options that could be done regardless of whether this proposal goes through or not?
Through the mayor, currently in the district's DCC bylaw, there is a project earmarked for a signalization of the intersection of Garibaldi Way and Tantalus. I believe it's assumed that that would be built in the year 2028, but there's recognition that that may be changed based on the need for it. So that's one project that we are currently collecting DCC funds to do. Aside from that, there's nothing, I don't believe, planned. However, there could be opportunities to do some realignment with driveway accesses along Garibaldi Way in that area, potentially.
Thank you. One of the speakers spoke about the disturbance by infrastructure being put in place if this project goes ahead. I know the report speaks to using pre-disturbed land on the fairways for roads, and the pathways for roads and for housing. Would infrastructure follow the same concept, or would we be looking at creating ditches and moving through riparian areas to put in infrastructure?
The current servicing plans that we've developed and had a consultant review all utilize corridors that are existing disturbed areas, be it fairways or cart paths. There obviously would be disturbance in the installation of some of these utilities, for example, a water pipe within an existing cart path. During construction, there would be oversight by a qualified professional that would be retained to make sure that the impacts to the habitat and fish streams and whatever were mitigated during the construction.
All right. I have 2 more questions. One of the speakers tonight talked about the fact that things are at a conceptual stage because we don't work out those details till development permit, but perhaps staff could speak to the land development agreement and how we do protect neighbors if this goes through, because it's true, a lot has been promised, and perhaps speak to that.
Yes, through the mayor. The land development agreement is proposed to be more specific for parcel A than other parts of the site because we know there are a lot of sensitive issues there. And I may just put the slide up to illustrate this. Excuse me, technical problem. Sorry for the delay. The land development agreement and the zoning bylaw work together. The zoning bylaw establishes the regulations which include height and setbacks. Those are, so those will be established by bylaw. Those are the kind of minimum requirements: height, setbacks, floor area ratio, which is the density and bulk of buildings. The land development agreement takes things a little bit further, and the applicants have proposed a number of things for parcel A, which we intend to secure in the land development agreement. And one of them is the one-level cottages, which will be both in the zoning bylaw and the land development agreement. There is also, and I realize this is a bit hard to see, the other part of this map is the height-restricted landscaping that is proposed along the north boundary. That will be secured in the land development agreement. And on the south side, there is a proposed no-go zone, basically an increased setback, that would also be secured in the land development agreement. In the other parcels, the design has not been looked at in nearly as much detail, and those will be dealt with at the development permit stage, which is the normal practice when you pin down details of landscaping and building design. So but in parcel A, there will be some additional regulations.
Thank you. My last question is, in reading the reports for the public hearing tonight, I noticed that BC Transit had slightly changed their text from an earlier referral to them, now saying that development is slightly, I guess the words they used was difficult to service. And I'm wondering, well, we shouldn't be building neighborhoods that aren't serviceable by transit. And so where would we be looking at that issue Is that in the land development agreement or at the DP if this goes ahead?
Through the mayor, if I could respond to that, I did speak with BC Transit when we got their referral response, and I think what they are referring to is a portion of parcel B that is, they have a kind of an ideal standard that people should be within 450 meters walking distance, I believe it is, of a bus stop. And they noted, they did their measurements and noted that parts of parcel B, because the bus routes right now are all on Tantalus, there's parts of parcel B that are going to be awkward for people to get to, and that also depends on whether the trail ends up getting built from parcel B down southward. So that's where that comment came from, where they mentioned that parts of the development will be difficult to service by transit. And that really goes back to the fact that it's just the geography of the site. There are some portions that are not close to the major roadways. In the long term, Dowwood and Newport Ridge Drive, when they, which is really very much long term, when they ultimately connect up through the Highlands, those two additional roads are intended to have transit, so the walking distance from parcel B to Dowwood will be much shorter. But in the interim, they suggested that maybe there's a way of taking people directly over to Tantalus, but unfortunately that goes through the most sensitive parts of the site. So I think the outcome is that there are just portions of parcel B that under the Tantalus Road bus service do not meet their preferred criteria.
Thank you.
Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you. Excuse me. How much affordable housing is required in our current policy that is just getting adopted?
That would be 10% of all units.
Perfect. Fire
I should
access.
clarify that this proposal includes 5%, and on top of it, there's a large cash contribution towards affordable housing reserve.
For current housing, and what I consider large and what you consider large is different. So, fire access into Site B.
Yes, through the mayor. There will be essentially Lot B without that fire access. There used to be a road proposed from where the hotel site is to the southern portion of Lot B. That was deleted through the process because essentially we wanted to keep as much of the habitat along that in that area undisturbed. So if there is no other access to Lot B other than the access to Dowwood Drive, that is an issue for the fire department for safety concerns. There's only one access egress point. So the concept was created to provide a emergency-only access from sort of the western portion of Lot B snaking around to Dowwood Drive. And what that would be a 4-meter paved, essentially a multi-use path that would be used pedestrians and bike traffic, but would be available in the event of emergency for emergency vehicles to use.
Thank you. And the other, I just thought about this question from Councillor Elliott of the reasoning was adjacent infrastructure, that it was appropriate to build in this area. My concern for building infrastructure on basically riparian, previous riparian land, this land is soft to build infrastructure on. Is the entire infrastructure of this land development strata controlled, so renewal of infrastructure is going to be paid for by the strata, or will it be paid for by the taxpayer?
Through the mayor, the infrastructure within the site is proposed to be strata owned and maintained.
So all the lots will be serviced and then paid for by the strata?
Correct.
And the strata will be paying into fees and be able to afford that? Has somebody done economic modeling to ensure that the strata will be collecting enough fees? This is going to be extremely expensive servicing for development because of land sinking and riparian areas. So I'm concerned about the economy of this and that the burden won't be on the taxpayer.
Through the mayor, with respect to settlement and land sinking, a preliminary geotechnical report has been completed and has identified, they've done some subsurface investigations and identified compressible soils or soft soils that can settle. So they've provided recommendations for excavating some of that material where required and also preloading, which basically provides that settlement before you install your services so that it minimizes settlement in the future.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. Council, any more questions for clarification? Councilor Pryor.
Well, just to follow up, what Councilor Chappelle said there, so the strata also looks after the wildlife management area, is that right?
Through the mayor, the proposal early on was for the strata to take care of maintenance, but that is no longer proposed. At a previous council meeting, we did present a number of options, which did include the strata taking care of maintenance, and council recommended, after looking at the options, that there's two aspects to this. One is the ecological reserve land, which the applicants, Polygon, would directly pay for maintenance for the first 5 years of any habitat improvements. The park areas, which really includes the trails also, are proposed to be paid for through taxation, but a structure is being proposed so that Polygon pays initially, and as the development builds out, the tax base pays an increasing share. So the strata is no longer proposed to pay for maintenance costs or to have responsibility for it. It's intended to be public park and run as part of the public park system.
I think I remember that. So
Yes.
that means that the houses there, their taxes will pay for the park?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
We'll go back out to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? One of you, and then the next one. Welcome. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Dion Burke again, Jay Crescent. Just a quick questions of clarification for things I heard today. This question is directed to Kevin Shoemaker, Polygon. In your presentation, Kevin, you referred to Polygon purchasing this property. Was that a firm price or conditional on the type of zoning this property gets? The purchase price that Polygon paid for this property, was it a firm set price or was it conditional on what type of zoning is finally applied to it? Okay. Thank you.
Pam?
Once again, a couple quick things.
Just reintroduce yourself just for the record.
Pam
Thank
Kostrowski, Tantalus Road, Squamish. We talked about the parking lot at the end of Newport Ridge. How is that zoned currently? It's going to become, it's donated back to the district, correct? And what's it zoned, or what will happen with that land? Potentially, or what potentially could happen?
P2, which is public, like it's owned by it's like any municipal infrastructure, is that correct?
Yes, and through the mayor, the land is currently zoned CD12. It's part of the overall parcel, and it is proposed to be zoned P3, which is the zoning that's applied to the more actively used parts of the site, whereas the P4 zone is the new zone for ecological reserve. So the parking lot is meant to support the park activity, and it's therefore being proposed as a P3 zone.
And I guess I'm just asking in the context that if 5 years, we're talking about what another council would do. If that land was owned by the district and another council came along, what would be possible to happen to that land under that zoning? Could the council sell it off and could it become an apartment building or another complex of some sort?
I can answer that one. I do have the P3 zoning up here. I can tell you exactly what that zoning would entail if you'd like. Assembly, campground, childcare facility, community college or university, golf courses, parks and playground, community event storage, recreational facility.
Or a new landowner could ask for it to be rezoned.
Yeah, so if any future council can rezone anything that's not covenanted, yes.
Right. Okay.
They can, we can't rezone other people's properties to park, but we can rezone any of our lands, whether it's park, can be technically rezoned in the future, yes.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. And I just wanted to, Chelsea's no longer here, but just wanted to draw some attention to what Chelsea Knight had to say. I know she's well regarded in the community as a habitat biologist, and I have a whole stack of papers from DFO that I've read through. Her name is all over that. She knows this land. And just when Ted asked her the question earlier, you know, when she was speaking frankly, and I believe he asked, you know, what do you think should happen, Chelsea? What's your thoughts? You know this probably better than anybody in this town. And I mean, it's not a quote, but I wrote, I would rather see the land left the way it is. That's what she said when she was asked. Thanks.
Yep, let me know if you do want to speak. Please come up, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
It's good. Kevin Shoemaker, Polygon Homes. I just wanted to clarify one thing. It's been partially clarified around the DFO and MOE, Department of Fisheries and Oceans and Ministry of Environment approvals. We can't build a thing here without those approvals. We're only at the beginning of the process with those two approving authorities. The District of Squamish approves or doesn't, if we were successful on the land use here, then we begin the whole authorization approach with DFO. The peer review and the environmental assessments, everything that's been done to date is in anticipation of what we believe that DFO is going to ask for, but we have no idea. And DFO is fully operational, fully involved with the process, and we don't build a stick of housing here without their approval or MOE's approval as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, we have one question for you here. Thanks.
Thank you. A couple of people tonight said that you have suggested closing off the land or not suggesting people shouldn't use the land. And I'm wondering if you could clarify that.
Okay, I know what I've said because I've said the same thing to everyone every time I've been asked the question. For liability reasons, there's ponds, there's danger trees, there's all sorts of things going on that site. We have signs up around the property that say no trespassing. We've kept those, they were there from the previous owner. I think anyone that's ever been on the site since we've owned it could say that if they were asked to leave, it was kindly, it was informative that we would say, these are private lands, if you could please make your way off of the property. We do not aggressively look for people on the land. The only time that we ever have that situation that I just described is when our maintenance person is out there cutting the lawn. So I've been on that land many, many times. I've come across many, many people walking dogs, playing golf, riding their bikes. We're not aggressively chasing people off the land. We allow people on the land. And that's the way it's been since we've owned it. But for liability reasons, and maybe I'm getting into trouble saying this, we have to keep that signage and at least give the, make some effort to inform people that it's private property.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Yeah, come up.
Just a brief question. Andreas Albert, Rockridge, 41120. A question for planning. We have the outline of a no-go zone. How is the no-go zone integrated into the bylaws with respect to setbacks? How is that covered? Could you elaborate on that?
See if I can get this up and running. Through the mayor, the proposed no-go zone at the along the south edge of this parcel will be included in the land development agreement. There is already a 9-meter setback that in the zoning bylaw that will apply to the entire perimeter of the property. The no-go zone in the land development agreement, when we get that drafted, will include some type of definition of meters, and it will just be kind of an additional layer. It may be that the no-go zone matches up with the 9-meter setback, but we haven't determined that yet. We
So
haven't.
the example is people couldn't actually use their backyard potentially at all, what you're saying? Is that what
No,
I'm
the
hearing?
no-go zone means a no-build zone. The no-go zone, I think, is the term that the applicants used in the drawing that's in front of us, but I think when we get down to a legal document, we'll be more specific. No buildings within X meters of, and we will include a map showing where it is. But it will be more specific when we get to that level of detail.
Thank you for the clarification.
And I just should mention, the land development agreement will be brought forward to council in its detailed form.
Thank you. I see someone who hasn't spoken with a hand up, and then I'll come back to people that have. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Hensel. I'm here to speak on my own behalf as a community member.
Sorry,
from
what's your
Squamish.
address?
Sorry, Kintyre Drive.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to just come here today to speak in favor of the development, actually. I would love to see the addition of the trail network into the community in terms of the number of children and seniors and what have you in the neighborhood. And in the growing Squamish area, it would be great to see some flat level trails that are accessible, that have parking, that have amenities and what have you, easily accessible. So to me, that's a big win for Squamish. If I was going to be critical of anything, I might suggest that it would be great to see some improvement to the current fire hall in the neighborhood. If there was going to be anything in lieu of or what have you, maybe a contribution to the infrastructure there might be something that would be well deserved given its current state. But otherwise, I feel pretty confident that things won't move forward unless fisheries and whatever support systems are in place that are needed in terms of the decisions that are made in the OCP and what have you. So I feel pretty comfortable that if it moves forward, it will be in such a way that it works for myself. So anyways, I'm not sure if that's entirely clear, but I'm in support. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Chris and then Pam.
Chris Pettingill, 1065 J Crescent, speaking on my own behalf. Just a few clarifying questions. I think one of the promised benefits is a restoration of ecological areas. And then I heard a comment that there might be some fencing to prevent people from entering some of the wetland areas. And I'm wondering how how we make that still compatible with bears and cougars and wolves, that kind of thing. This ties into my earlier question or concern about maintaining a corridor to that site if ecological values are important. And is just a better understanding is the purpose here to protect ecologically for small amphibians and stuff, or are we thinking about the larger animals too, and how do we balance that human access, or less human access to the wetlands, but enough for the bears and so on? The other question, and it's a bit of a two-parter, my understanding is with the current zoning, if the current developer or if they decide to sell to someone, they can reactivate a golf course, cut down trees and brush, expand greens, and there's nothing that as a community, practically speaking, we can really do. They have to, I believe, pay attention to riparian areas, but other than that, they're fairly free to make it a private golf course again, an active one, and do more ecological damage to the non-riparian areas. And then, so I'd just like to confirm that that understanding is correct. And that it may expand to other recreational activities because recreation is in the zoning. So I'm not sure if they need approval for other sorts of recreation or if there's a general definition of recreation that's just accepted and doesn't have to go through council of the community. And then the other part of that is my understanding of riparian, and I'm not sure if it's correct, is that even when there's riparian areas, they can be disturbed if other riparian areas are created somewhere else. And further, my understanding is that other location for riparian areas could be on a separate property somewhere else. And so I'm not sure if that's accurate, and I'm wondering if someone can clarify that. And just to the point of, if someone wanted to make a really big golf course, could they disturb even the riparian areas as long as they built riparian somewhere else?
You want to speak to specifically what's in CD 12?
Unfortunately, I didn't bring the CD12 zone
I
bylaw
have it
with
on my
me.
computer.
You've got it? Okay. While Jonas is looking that up, yes, there is a range of things that can occur in the CD12 zone, but even though the uses are permitted, you still need to get permits to do any of those things. You need building permits. If you're altering the site, you need a site alteration permit. So it's not a free-for-all under the current zoning. If I could kind of summarize it that way, you still need to get permits.
There are a range of uses allowed in the zone. However, they are delineated by area, so it's a bit more site-specific, but it's hotels, motels, restaurant, golf course, clubhouse, swimming pool, exercise rooms, daycare. It's quite extensive. Any expansion of the uses that are on site today, if they were within the riparian areas assessment area, would require a development permit from the district and approvals from the province and the federal government. So it wouldn't be as much of a discretional process as a rezoning is. It'd be a permitting process, but there would still have to be a process.
Yeah. But just to clarify, Area A within CD 12 is golf course specific. So any sort of golf, whatever can come under the golf course term, and all the other uses are within the area where the hotel is and the,
Yes.
I think that-
Yes.
it's hard to read here, but I think it's B.
Yes, golf course, park, and uses that are associated with those.
And you had a second part to your question too? Oh, do you remember it?
Yes, there were a couple of questions on the environmental aspects. Through the mayor, I guess one of the questions was about fencing. We don't have a firm proposal for fencing, and when the detailed environmental development permit process takes place, if the project moves forward, all of that fencing is looked at in detail. The bioinventory report has a fairly fine-grained look at where amphibians are, where the mammals are, where the bird habitat is. So the permits that are looked at through the development permit will determine where fencing is appropriate. There's places where you're going to want to keep people and their dogs off the riparian areas, and there's areas that are suitable for mammals that you may not want to fence. So all of that fine-grained detail will be brought forward at the development permit stage. It's not kind of a quick answer. It's a foot-by-foot examination of the site. Your other question on riparian areas and whether they can be disturbed, there is legislation that governs disturbance of riparian areas, and first of all, it has to go through a process with the district and with the DFO and Ministry of Environment. And you have to compensate for any habitat disturbance, and the ratio of compensation depends on whether it's riparian habitat or aquatic habitat. And as I understand it, the ministries want to see that compensation on site. It would only be in exceptional circumstances that compensation would take place somewhere else.
Go ahead.
Just quickly, for clarity again, in terms of even if it's on-site moving riparian, or the idea that changes to the golf course would need a permit, those are, I guess, non-discretionary permits in both cases, so it's not like a subjective process where you get community feeling. It's sort of an objective checklist, and if they meet the checklist, we have to let it go through, or is there room for community opinion?
Through the mayor, the development permit process does not have a formal public input the way a rezoning does, but I wouldn't say it's an automatic approval. There's a lot of negotiations back and forth on development permit process. So did you want to add to that?
Yeah, if I may add to that, if you meet all of the guidelines of the development permit area, then you're obligated a permit. So yes, often there is negotiation, and there's in some cases departure from the guidelines, and that's where council's discretion comes into play, unless the application meets the guidelines, which also happens. So it could be either.
Pam?
Pam Kostrowski, Tallis Road, Squamish. Just to the proponent's last speaker, He commented that, they're trying to have compensated or trying to compensate for everything that DFO may or may not ask of them, but they don't know because they haven't contacted DFO. No, they're not required to at this point, but they haven't. I have been in contact, and council is welcome to all my emails, with Randall Lake, Acting Manager, Canadian Planning and Stewardship, Canadian Wildlife Service, Environment Canada, and Michael Engel, I can't pronounce it, Michael Inglesward, Team Leader, Fisheries Protection Program, Ecosystem Management Branch, Fisheries and Oceans Canada. I've been speaking to both those entities, and neither one of them have heard from this group. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Go ahead, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Mike Nelson, 2135 Ridgeway Crescent. I'm the principal of Cascade Environmental. I wrote the assessment for the golf course, or the Garibaldi Springs development. Just want to clarify a couple of questions. One was that we have not contacted DFO, Environment Canada, or the province. In fact, we have contacted all three groups. When they first started this project out, we contacted Brenda Rotinsky, who is the acting head of the Habitat Protection Division at DFO, and reviewed the process in I would say, broad context terms. And her basic response was, we do not review rezoning applications, and we do not review a project unless you have a project coming forward before us. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cop-out on DFO's point of view, but that's sort of just the way it is. We did review the project with her, and as circumstances would have it, the person we talked to actually worked on the golf course when it was developed, and so she was very familiar with the project, but she basically said she can't provide any guidance or comments at that time until there's a proposal coming forward. We had much the same conversation with the province about their review process. They basically told us the procedures, the process they'd follow through, and when we'd have to approach them for development, but they would not review a project until it was brought forward as a project. In other words, it's going ahead. They will not review rezoning applications. We also had extensive meetings with Environment Canada. I'm just trying to think of the person's name. I'm having a bit of a seniors moment right now, but and it was particularly to do with the Pacific Water Shrew. And we were talking about what constitutes habitat for Pacific Water Shrew, what is in the recovery plan, and what isn't in the recovery plan. And I have some emails and recordings from the representative from Environment Canada stating that the golf course fairways are not considered Pacific Water Shrew habitat and are not part of their recovery plan. There's also some comments about the fencing and riparian areas and how those would be used. There's a requirement for fencing between development and riparian areas. So as I see it right now, again, fairly conceptual, would be where you have the built development, you would have a fence to segregate, basically to stop encroachment into the riparian area. In wildlife areas, I'm not a big fan of fences for the exact reason that was mentioned. It stops wildlife moving through it. We'd use the fences as cattle gates, if you want to call them that, to direct people onto the paths to make sure they stay on the path, and not to have them all the way along the paths, because while that would stop people from going out, it would also stop wildlife from crossing the paths. So the idea would be use the fences very judiciously, probably bridge crossings, and to direct people onto the paths to start with.
Thank
Anyway, thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Come up, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
See how close to 10 o'clock we can take this. My name is Steve Fothnoff. I'm a resident of Brackendale, 41363 Kingswood Road. I'm a geotechnical engineer. I've worked for Polygon here and elsewhere in the Lower Mainland. I just want to say that, they're one of the best developers that I've worked with. And if there's anyone who can get this project through, it's a very difficult site. Obviously environmentally, I'm not going to, provide a strong opinion whether the development should go ahead or not, but they're the guys that can take care of it. All developments with, its pros and cons. I've been a taxpayer in Squamish since 2006. At that time, the big debate was for the Thunderbird Creek development, Jay Crescent, there were frog ponds. And what do you do with the frog ponds? And no one wanted that to go through. Well, in the end, people live on Jay Crescent. I live on Kingswood Road. When I look around, I see green hills, trees everywhere, except for in the direction of the golf course, because I look at a big, ugly retaining wall that no one has really consulted on. And beyond the retaining wall, I see big houses on Dowa Drive and on Rock Ridge Drive. So, it's, everything we do affects everyone else. And, I just think that, there's pros and cons, and I guess it's up to Council and Mayor to make that decision. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing? I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? And I'll ask for a third and final time. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no other speakers, I just want to note that council members are not permitted to receive further submissions or hear either a proponent or an opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. Any and all communication must be channeled through staff. I now declare the public hearing closed, and I want to thank everyone for their time, and there's still stalwart people here. Really appreciate your input. As always, our community is very respectful, very direct, very educated, informed, and passionate, so I thank you all for that. And I will look for a motion to terminate the meeting from council. Moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.